Good morning, everybody. My name is Gene Coltas. I'm presiding member for this Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel meeting this morning. Part A of the agenda is introduction, and item 1 is the opening of the meeting. I'll open the meeting at 9:35 a.m. and in doing so acknowledge we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. Acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia. Pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with DAP Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011, and members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. During the meeting, panel members may refer to technical devices to assist them in considering the information before them. I'll introduce the members of the panel present. From the City of Joondalup, Councillor Adrian Hill, furthest to my left. Online, Councillor Rebecca Pizzi. As I said, I'm Gene Coltas, presiding member. To my left is Karen Hyde, deputy presiding member, and to her left is Tony Arias, specialist member. Item 2 on the agenda, part A, Andrew Howe, specialist member, has apologised for not being able to attend. Item 3, members on leave of absence, there are none. Item 4, noting of minutes. Previous meeting minutes are available on the DAP website. Part B of the agenda. Item 1 is declaration of due consideration. I'll ask all members to confirm that they have duly considered all the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and Part B related information by raising their right hand, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 2 is a disclosure of interest from Mr. Andrew Howe, who was a specialist member. He declared an impartiality interest. Mr. Howe is an employee of Element Advisory, have lodged a submission for this application and have also been approved to make a deputation at the meeting, and Mr. Howe has not been given approval to sit on the meeting. I'll now invite members to declare any additional information or interest that they have today on the agenda. No. Councillors, can I ask if this item was considered at a council meeting previously?
Not during my time.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is this Form 1 DAP application for proposed redevelopment of the Glengarry Shopping Centre at 59 Arnisdale Road, Duncraig. And we have a number of submitters, as you can see through the number of people in the meeting room, and in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024, Clause 4.2, presentation are limited to 3 minutes. There's been no extension of time granted to any of the presentations. And as we have had the presentations for a number of days and have read them, you're encouraged to focus on the main aspects of the presentation within the 3-minute time frame. And given the number of people here, it's important to extend due courtesy and respect to the Development Assessment Panel and other participants within the meeting. Panel members will be invited to ask questions of presenters after each presentation. We do have a number of presenters. They're listed on the agenda, and I'll start by asking Mary O'Byrne to come and make her presentation, please. Take a seat up there, please.
Hot seat. Thank you. Congestion and impacts on adjacent hospices. Good morning. Submissions to Council reflect strong community concern about increased traffic volumes, likely to worsen existing intersection bottlenecks Though the traffic impact assessment suggests the increase is within allowable limits, the report has several shortcomings. It lacks detail on data collection methodology. Modelling only extends to 2036 with no trajectory beyond. It fails to consider future residential zoning changes from R20 to R40 and above. It omits historical crash data required under volumes 4 and 5 of the WAPC Traffic Impact Assessment Guidelines. The proposal will intensify congestion at already problematic junctions, and though impacting commute and thereby impacting commute times and emergency access, TIA lacks details, fails to account for other traffic generated in the area. Another major concern is the impact on the adjacent hospital, particularly the hospice, Glengarry Hospice, which relies on a peaceful environment and garden access for families. The truck access point exceeds allowable noise limits under the Environmental Protection Noise Regulations. The proposed low boundary wall offers insufficient soundproofing and sound minimization design. The truck corridor also compromises patient privacy, overlooking hospital gardens, and the 14.7 metre high commercial structure will loom over the hospital with no landscaping or trees to soften its impact. In conclusion, the proposed development presents a serious and unacceptable risk to the well-being of hospice patients and the hospital community. Excessive noise, privacy intrusion, and the imposing commercial presence undermine the facility's purpose. Without effective mitigation, such as engineered sound barriers, private protections, and landscaping, the development fails to respect the needs of vulnerable patients and individuals. These concerns must be addressed with urgency and compassion before any approval is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel members, are there any questions of Ms. Byrne? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask Guy Stevenson to make the presentation.
Good morning, panel members. This proposed non-residential development adjacent to the residential streets fails to meet key planning principles that protect the character, the amenity, and the livability of our neighbourhood. First, scale and bulk. At 12.2 metres high, with a reduced setback of 3 metres, the building significantly departs from this established low-density streetscape. Under Clause 16 of City of Joondalup Local Planning Scheme Number 3, developments must enhance the amenity and the character of the area. The proposal does the opposite, dominating the neighbourhood homes and eroding privacy, openness, and a sense of place. Second, the design and the materials. The use of metal cladding on the north and east facades introduces an industrial aesthetic that clashes with the surroundings residential palette. Section 4.2, the commercial zone local planning policy, requires materials to be compatible with the surrounding built form. This design degrades, not complements, the visual harmony of the street. Third, lack of transitional design. There are no stepped heights, no landscaping buffers, no articulation to soften the interference between commercial and residential zones. State Planning Policy 7.0, Design and Principle 1. Context and character calls for the developments to respond to and enhance the local character. This proposal ignores that principle, creating a harsh and abrupt boundary that fragments their streetscape. Fourth, landscaping deficiencies. The proposal provides only 6.3% landscaping, well below the 8% minimum, and results in a 33% net reduction due to the tree removals. This breaches the City of Joondalup's commercial zone policy, which requires landscaping to enhance development appearance, streetscape, and amenity. It violates the Design Principle 6 amenity of SPP 70, which calls for landscaping and supports environmental performance and public enjoyment. The result is diminished sight and a degraded public ground. finally, cumulative impact, reduced setbacks, increased height, and incompatible design contribute to a development that feels imposed, not integrated. And for the residential development policy reminds us that all developments should complement the bulk and scale of its surroundings. That principle is just as relevant here. In summary, this proposal fails to respect the scale and character of the adjacent residential street. It introduces incompatible materials, lacks transitional design, and contravenes multiple planning policies at both the local and state levels. It prioritizes commercial convenience and community integrity, trading the soul of the neighborhood for a sales ledger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel members, are there any questions? No, thank you very much. Ask for Susan Stevenson's presentation, please.
Susan Stevenson.
This is concerns regarding light pollution. According to Environmental Protection Authority's guidance, verse 33, light spill can be distracting and annoying and can affect sleep, a major concern for residents of Culloden Road. There is expectation from the EPA that the relevant approval processes for a project in a planning approval capacity will ensure that lighting is designed to avoid adverse impacts on neighbouring land uses. Unfortunately, to date, Woolworths have not provided any clear details of proposed lighting and have not provided any light pollution impact assessment. We are unable to assess whether the proposal will adhere to Australian standards AS 4282-1997, control of the obtrusive effects of outdoor lighting. Due to this lack of transparency, City of Joondalup and DAP are unable to adhere to the EPA's guidance. Light sources of concern include external flood lighting and security lighting, lighting from the underground car park, which is actually located above ground for the majority of the development. The open grille presents opportunity for light spill from vehicle headlights and internal lighting directly onto Culloden Road housing. Light spill from other commercial properties south of development, the straight truck corridor located between Culloden and Arnisdale will become a light tunnel, exposing residents to an additional light source. The light produced from First Choice Liquor car park by means of floodlighting and car headlights movements will flow directly onto homes of Culloden Road. No attempt has been made to screen residents from this light spill. Removal of trees adds to the severity of light spill to surrounding land uses, as trees provide additional screening to light pollution. The non-conformance to clause 5.7 of the commercial zone LPP regarding shortfall of trees and non-conformance of minimum setback sets as prescribed in clause 5.7 of the commercial zone LPP exacerbates the impact of light spill. Residents' concerns about lighting were presented to Woolworths through engagement with Urbis, yet there has been a failure on multiple occasions to provide this information. The clear lack of transparency does not allow for effective decisions making and also allows for little accountability if the development.
Thank you, Susan. Panel members, any questions? No, thank you. On Oakley to make his presentation, please.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm here today with my wife to express deep concern about the scale and design of the proposed development. The structure is overwhelmingly large and imposing. The site is surrounded by single-storey brick homes and a similarly modest hospital, all set back with mature trees and well-maintained landscape. In stark contrast, the proposed building features a harsh concrete and metal facade, resembling a large shed. Spanning roughly 10 by 80 metres, with minimal landscaping and no effort to blend with the existing streetscape. Adding to our concern is a large illuminated sign facing our residential street. The development in its current state is completely out of character with our neighbourhood. The City of Joondalup's planning policies emphasise that building height should respond to the natural topography. This proposal does not. It's featureless, it lacks variation and ignores the surrounding landscape. It also contradicts the city's own objectives for commercial zones, which call for developments to respond to local context and enhance the streetscape. The proposed floor space of 6,327 square metres is over 50% more than the city's local commercial strategy. Part A recommended 4,000 square metre threshold. The proposal for a new truck access point on Culloden Road presents serious safety concerns, and it's clear from the council's report that it will be extremely detrimental to the residents of Culloden Road. Installation of a truck dock turntable would alleviate the need for Culloden Road access, but has been dismissed by Woolworths due to the associated cost of installation and modification to design. It would seem that residents have to pay the price of poor planning, overdevelopment of the site and commercial greed. As a long-standing resident of Culloden Road for over 48 years, I strongly object to the use of our lovely safe residential street being used for frequent, heavy semi-trailer use at least 3 times a day, and having a multi-level shed type development on our doorstep. Surely there is a more suitable development that keeps the community in mind and not just big business and profits. Thank you for your time.
Panel members, any questions? Thank you. Sonia Daniels, your presentation, please.
Good morning. This is about the inadequate traffic assessment. To date, the traffic impact assessment for this development fails to address key residential roads significantly affected, including Glengarry Drive and Culloden Drive. This omission undermines transparency and community consultation, both critical to responsible planning. Under Scheme 2, Clause 67T of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, councils must give due regard to traffic assessments relevant to a proposal. Western Australian Planning Commission's Transport Impact Assessment Guidelines from 2020 also require public assessment of developments likely to alter traffic patterns, considering all affected roads and intersections. Despite this, the current TIA excludes Glengarry Drive, Culloden Drive, and other nearby residential streets. This is especially concerning as Culloden Road is the designated entry for Woolworths delivery trucks. Plans show two-way arrows at this entry, suggesting it may also serve as an exit for smaller trucks. Culloden Road's impact warrants a dedicated traffic assessment. Beyond Woolworths trucks, the following types of traffic are expected to increase. Fire and service vehicles, for example, tradespeople, cleaners, non-Woolworths tenants operating outside standard hours. There's staff vehicles, especially during shift changes and peak retail periods. Rideshare and food delivery drivers, likely to use Culloden Road via GPS and a direct route. If customer vehicles, particularly if signage and enforcement are inadequate. Given this increase in road usage, a comprehensive TIA for Culloden is essential. Similarly, Glengarry Drive is poised to become a truck thoroughfare. It services 2 schools and includes a designated school crossing, yet no traffic or risk assessment has evaluated safety implications for students and pedestrians. Items 4 and 5 of the WAPC TIA guidelines require developments to assess impacts on surrounding roads, intersections, and vulnerable users, such as school children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any panel questions at this stage? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Sally Cotgrove.
Good morning. I'm here today to express strong opposition to the proposed vehicle access point in Culloden Road. Culloden Road is a quiet, tree-lined corridor valued for its safety, walkability and community feel. Its mature tree canopy, low traffic and proximity to public transport make it ideal for pedestrians and families, not freight vehicles. The proposal to route heavy articulated vehicles along Culloden Road represents a breach of its design function under Western Australia's road hierarchy, as defined by Main Roads WA, which classifies this road as a local access road, not intended for freight or through traffic. The definition states, provide access to abutting properties with amenity, safety and aesthetics having priority over vehicle movement and function. This is a planning failure with real world consequences. This proposal also conflicts with livable neighbourhoods, a key planning framework endorsed by the WA Planning Commission, which states local streets should not carry through traffic or freight vehicles. Introducing heavy trucks will compromise safety, increase noise and vibration, and degrade the efficiency of a street never designed for such use. Further, State Plan Policy 5.4, road and rail noise, requires minimising noise impacts on sensitive land uses. This proposal does the opposite, bringing industrial scale traffic into a residential area without acoustic mitigation or regard for long-term well-being. In summary, this proposal breaches the WA road hierarchy, contravenes livable neighbourhoods and State Planning Policy 5.4, undermines safety, amenity and character, conflicting with State Planning Policy 7.0, design of the built environment, Principle 1, context and character. City of Joondalup Residential Development Local Planning Policy Section 2 objectives, enhance and complement the visual character, bulk and scale of the surrounding built form, and protect and enhance amenity of residents through attractive landscape, streetscapes and increased greening of edges. We are not opposing development, we are opposing poor planning. Turning a quiet residential street into a freight corridor introduces unnecessary traffic, noise and safety risks. We respectfully urge the panel to reject this proposal.
Thank you, Sally. Panel members, any questions? Thank you. We'll move on to the next presenter, Diane Mansfield, please.
Panel, and thank you for giving me the chance to speak today. I'm here because I have serious concerns about this proposal. It's not just one or two small issues, it's a pattern of problems that touch on planning, environment, and how the site will operate and how it fits into the community. Let's start with the landscaping and environmental side of things. Doesn't meet the basic landscaping requirement of 8%, and the buffer zone is only 0.3 metres, well below the 1 metre needed to help with noise and visual screening. The building is also too close to the boundary, 3 metres instead of the required 3.5, which affects the privacy of neighbours. More importantly, trees that are home to the endangered Carnaby's black cockatoo will be removed. That goes against national environmental laws. The design also ignores the natural slope of the land, which could lead to erosion and damage to the local ecosystem. That's not in line with the City of Joondalup's planning priorities. These aren't small mistakes, they're serious issues that need attention. On the operational side, there's no proper loading area for outside tenants, which means delivery trucks could end up using quiet residential streets. That's a safety concern. The signage planned for the northern boundary is too large and doesn't meet the rules. It could also add to light pollution. The underground car park is unclear in its design and lacks proper screening. There's nothing in place to stop noise from speakers or cars affecting nearby homes. At the access point on Culloden Road just isn't suitable. It raises real concerns about traffic, noise and pedestrian safety. Beyond all that, the proposal doesn't connect well with the surrounding area. It doesn't support walking or to add to the local feel. It seems out of place in the community it's meant to serve. And let's not forget, 407 formal objections were submitted. That's not a small number. That's the community speaking loud and clear. So I ask, are we making decisions that reflect the community values? Or are we letting a proposal with so many issues go ahead without proper review? This isn't just about one problem, it's about the combined effect of many. And when you look at it all together, the message is clear. This proposal isn't ready. It doesn't meet the rules and it's not in the best interest of the community. I respectfully ask the panel to reject this application or at the very least, delay it until these concerns are properly addressed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Diane. Panel members, have you any questions? No, thank you. To Lisa Mansfield.
Good morning. As per the Environmental Protection Act of 1986, unreasonable noise is considered as noise that unreasonably interferes with the health, welfare, convenience, comfort, or amenity of any person. The noise associated with this development can only be considered unreasonable. Nearby homes and hospice located directly alongside the loading area and truck corridor are considered highly noise sensitive. Whilst the acoustic report complains compliance to noise restrictions, it only considers one factor, LA10, allowable noise produced for 10% of the time. The only way Woolworths can possibly adhere to this aspect of the environmental protection noise regulations is by limiting unloading and loading activities to 2 hours and 24 minutes per day. This is unlikely to be achievable as they are unable to turn off truck engines or refrigerated trucks, and due to the sheer size of the retail space and the associated deliveries and waste collections, the number of trucks attending site will far exceed this restriction. Despite repeated requests for information on estimated truck numbers, Woolworths have not provided this information. The Act clearly states that highly sensitive noise areas must not exceed an LA max value of 65 decibels. This is the assigned value, which is not to be exceeded from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The proposed semi-trailer Woolworths trucks produce 84 decibels of sound, far in exceedance of allowable levels. The LA max value between 7 p.m. and 7 p.m. is even less at 55 decibels. The data indicates these trucks will be non-compliant day and night. This non-compliance has been excluded from the report. The report provides misleading information claiming compliance, as it is only possible, although unlikely, for the development to achieve 1 out of 3 criteria. The report also contains information that has been incorrectly referenced from the Act, making the accuracy of the report questionable. The report does not assess the noise associated with the underground car park that is actually above ground for the majority of the development. nor does it assess the noise associated with truck usage on a residential street as per State Planning Policy 5.4, road and rail noise. There is no noise management plan provided. In addition to the multitude of reasons of why this development is unsuitable, it is clear that noise associated with the development is unreasonable and in breach of regulatory thresholds affecting residential amenity and health. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Panel members, any questions? No, thank you, Lisa. Mansfield, please.
Good morning, panel. Today I'm here to express deep concern, not just about one aspect of this proposal, but about the sheer number of planning breaches and the cumulative impact they represent. This is not a case of isolated non-compliance. This is a proposal that contravenes at least 14 distinct planning provisions across state planning policies, City of Joondalup local planning policies, and legislation. Let's be clear. This is not a technical oversight, it's a systemic failure to meet the standards that protect our communities. The proposed vehicle access point onto Culloden Road alone breaches multiple frameworks. It violates its classification as a local access road under WA's road hierarchy. It contradicts livable neighbourhoods, which prohibits freight traffic on local streets. It introduces industrial scale traffic into a quiet residential street, compromising safety, amenity, and the very character of the neighbourhood. But that's just one part of the problem. The proposal also fails to meet noise regulations under the Environmental Protection Act and noise regulations. The acoustic report omits key criteria and fails to account for the impact on nearby homes and a hospice, both highly sensitive receptors. Light pollution is another serious concern. No light pollution impact assessment has been provided. Lighting from above ground car parks, below ground car parks, truck corridors and commercial properties will spill into homes, disrupting sleep and comfort. The removal of trees and non-compliance with setback requirements only worsen this. On the matter of trees and landscaping, it fails to satisfy both State Planning Policy 7.0, Principle 6, and also the Commercial Local Planning Policy 5.7. With the known and reported shortfall of landscaping, this only makes the building look bigger and remind us how it does not complement the surrounding form and streetscape. This does not satisfy Planning Policy 7.0, Design of the Built Environment, in regards to context and character. And while the retail impact has been downplayed, the proposal still fails the net benefit test under State Planning Policy 4.2 and risks undermining existing centres and services. Taken together, these issues form a pattern of disregard for planning policy, for environmental standards, and most importantly, for the lived experience of residents. So I ask, are we making decisions that reflect community values, or are we allowing fragmented assessments and commercial interests to override the collective well-being of our neighbourhood? This proposal is not just flawed, it's fundamentally incompatible with the planning principles designed to protect places like this. The cumulative breaches demand scrutiny, they demand accountability, and they demand that this panel challenge the proposal rather than accept it. We respectfully urge the panel to reject this application, or at the very least, defer it until these issues are properly addressed.
Thank you very much, Luke. Panel members, any questions? No, thank you. We'll move on to the next presenter, Callum Thatcher from Element Advisory.
Good morning, panel members. I hope you can hear me. So my name is Callum Thatcher, representing Duncraig by Hawaiian. With Hawaiian's centre in such close proximity to the proposed Glengarry redevelopment, retail sustainability is of key concern and in our view has not been adequately addressed. The proposed retail floor space increase, combined with adjoining land within the Glengarry neighbourhood centre, exceeds the City of Joondalup's 4,000 square metre commercial floor space cap under their strategy. Given the adjoining land's similar zoning and redevelopment potential, Hawaiian is concerned that using a large share of this cap now will strain the activity centre hierarchy if this site is later redeveloped. This has not been considered at any level of detail and we believe should be considered given the application is exceeding the strategy. Metcash, the owners of IGA, who occupy Duncraig by Hawaiian, commissioned a peer review of the applicant's net benefit tests. As I'm sure the panel is aware, impact percentages above 10% under State Planning Policy 4.2 is generally considered unacceptable and will likely undermine the long-term viability of centres. Hence, the reliance on net benefit tests when additional floor space enters the network is critical. It's understood the peer review of the applicant's net benefit test was considered to be satisfactory by the city. However, there are a number of points within the Deep End Services review that have not been addressed, including the IGO sales assumptions are trading 50% higher on average in sales per square metre than the needs report has assumed. 68% of supermarket spending is escaping the trade area, which is referenced by the applicant's assessment. This percentage is significantly overstated, and to the first point, the IGA stores are performing better than assumed. This is important to note as these are under assumptions to directly correlate to the redistribution of sales and in turn relate back to percentage of impact to the individual centres. If the report is under assuming the store sales, the percentage of impact will be lower. It is noted our peer review report was informed by having access to IGA sales data. There was also a heavy reliance on the redistribution of sales from larger surrounding centres of high hierarchy, such as Warwick, Karrinyup and Whitford's all secondary centres, totalling $15.6 million in sales, in comparison to the $2 million of sales redirected from Duncraig by Hawaiian. As I'm sure you're aware, the majority of people do not do their weekly shopping centres at these larger secondary centres, and largely the preference is to shop at smaller centres. Again, there's an argument that the 15.6 million is over-relying on higher order centres to minimise the extent of impact on smaller locally based centres who offer the exact same service. As outlined, there's significant concern the impact to Duncraig by Hawaiian is being understated, potentially quite significantly. And the comment made by a retail consultant was it was implausible that only a 6% impact is referenced, which is a very strong statement and hence Hawaiian's concerns. For the reasons outlined, we do not support this application in its current form, and given there's still a significant amount of uncertainty with the retail impact being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the panel of Mr. Thatcher? Yes, Mr. Arias.
Thank you, presiding member. Two questions. The distance from this proposal to Duncraig Shopping Centre?
Through the chair, 1.2 kilometres.
Okay. And the Duncraig Shopping Centre, what order is it under the Joondalup policy?
It's a neighbourhood centre.
Okay, so 4,000 metres applies, is that correct?
That was the 4,000 was the cap just for Glengarry specifically under the commercial strategy.
Okay, final question. And Duncraig, what's the floor space?
It's similar. It's probably around. Probably off the top of my head, it's probably maybe around 6,000 in total retail.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Thatcher. Nathan Stewart next. From Planning and Sandra Doyle.
Thank you, member. My name is Nathan Stewart from Lateral Planning. I'm representing 3 IGA businesses nearby to the proposed development. And with me is Sandra Doyle from Metcash Property. We have 3 objections today, which all relate back to the size of the centre. Firstly, the applicant's need report has several shortcomings based on the advice from Deep End Services engaged by Metcash. One of the key issues identified by Deep End Services was that the proponent's need report relied on inaccurate and understated sales figures and floor areas from the IGA supermarkets in the area. For example, the applicant's report assumed $10,000 per square metre at Duncraig and $11,000 per square metre at Marmion Village, when these stores are actually trading on average 50% higher than that. The floor area of Marmion Village was 949 square metres, when in fact it was 1,323 square metres, a difference of 40%. In response to our submission, the applicant has suggested that the IGAs in the area are over trading. We disagree, as the stores in the area are currently trading just above the national average or at or below the state average for WA. The proponent has also understated the sales figures for Woolworths. The need report has adopted a sales per square metre for the Woolworths supermarket of $10,829, which is about 21% below the reported Woolworths national average. Deep End Services has advised that the effect of the low predicted sales level for Woolworths is that the percentage impacts on other centres are lower, which makes the proposal look better, when in fact there should be a higher volume of sales to be redistributed to from surrounding centres, causing a higher impact. In our submission, we've included several examples of the impact of a Woolworths-sized supermarket opening nearby to an existing IGA, and these impacts have been severe. Secondly, because of these issues, the proponent has not clearly demonstrated the compliance with the requirements of SPP 4.2. SPP 4.2 requires net benefit tests to demonstrate that the proposal will not have an unreasonable and detrimental impact on the activity centre hierarchy, not have an unreasonable and detrimental impact upon existing, committed and planned public and private investment into activity centres, and deliver net benefit to the community and not reduce the level of access to services by the community. The proponent has not clearly demonstrated that the proposal has satisfied these tests. Thirdly, and lastly, because the proponent has not clearly demonstrated compliance with SPP 4.2, we are still very concerned that the proposal does not comply with clause 67B of Schedule 2 of the planning regulations. This provision is distinct from general concerns over market competition. It highlights the need to consider whether a proposed development may cause broader disruption to the community, accessibility to services offered within activity centres, particularly those that serve a neighbourhood or local function. In this case, the proposal has a substantial risk of displacing or undermining existing services at nearby centres, including established IGA supermarkets that have invested significant money into recent refurbishments to ensure they continue to provide a high quality of service. One example of this is Careen just spent approximately $2 million on a recent refurbishment. The proposal has the potential to significantly impact on this. Therefore, the proposal doesn't comply with clause 67B of the planning regulations. And for these reasons, all three reasons, we're of the view that the proposal should not be supported in its current form. We ask the panel to include a second reason for refusal relating to the issue of retail floor space and compliance with SPP 4.2. As a minimum, the application should be deferred to ensure that this matter is addressed by the proponent through an updated need report, which can then be reviewed and reconsidered. Thank you for your time this morning. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Panel members, any questions of Stuart? Yes, Member Hyde.
Just briefly, the applicant's needs assessment and net benefit test, and also the independent review that is referred to in the RAR, which I believe to be the one that you submitted. The city obviously had a peer review of all of that information, and that peer review, according to the RAR, suggested that trading levels post-development were viable, and across the network of centres expected to recover between 2026 and 2031. So the city has concluded that these impacts are within a normal competitive range. What are your comments on that peer review that the city engaged?
Yeah, so we're still concerned that that peer review didn't take into consideration the sales data, the actual sales data for the IGAs in the surrounding area, which then that affects the outputs of that modelling. The concern is that the modelling that's been done is not accurate and can't be relied upon because it doesn't have the actual sales data.
So you're saying the peer review is not accurate?
Okay, yes, yep.
All right, thank you.
Just a query. I noticed you say that in your submission that the Joondalup, Balcatta and Inglewood IGAs were impacted by newer developments. How do you establish that?
So that was based on sales data from the existing IGAs in the 12 months leading to the opening of the Woolworths, and then looking at the 12 months after the opening of the Woolworths. And there was a significant impact to the sales for those IGAs in the 12 months after the Woolworths opened. I think in those examples, one store was impacted by up to 16%, one was impacted by 15%, and then the other one closed.
Okay, now the one that closed, is that definite that it was the opening of a new centre that caused that, or was it just?
All I can say is that the store was doing good prior to that, and within 5 months of the Woolworths open to be closed.
there have been other factors like poor management.
The store had been trading longevity with the retailer that was there.
And for those other centres at Rosalie and Balcatta and Inglewood, was there a recovery in the trade? I mean, there's always an effect when a new centre opens, apparently, but that then settles down, and people find that the whiz bang new one isn't that great, and they go back to the other one for various reasons.
Those numbers were taken for a 12-month period prior and 12 months after. So over 12 months, even to the 12th month, it was at that percentage.
But as I understand it, it also takes years, sometimes 2 or 3 years to settle.
The numbers again to see what the 4-year forecast was.
All right, I'm just going on anecdotal advice that we've been provided. Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Mr. Harris.
Just a follow-up on the question Member Hyde raised. You indicated that the peer review had incorrect sales information. The information you're referring to, is that readily available?
I think it's readily.
It's not readily available because our stores are all franchised, but we can get approval from those stores to allow that to be accessed.
And just
So you've obviously indicated what in your mind, the correct figure is. The analysis been done, based on what you're saying, couldn't have been accurate because they didn't have that information. Is that
national averages?
If it's not readily available?
So the national averages are publicly available. So even using those, it's still 50% above what the applicant has assumed in the retail report. So the retail report has assumed $10,000 and $11,000 respectively for a couple of the centres. The national figures are publicly available, and those are around 14,500. So it's still well above what was assumed in the applicant's report. So the issue is, well, the national average is 50% above, but you've relied on 10,000 to 11,000. We think that's unsubstantiated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Stewart or Ms. Doyle? Thank you very much. Next presenter is Rosa Mantcon.
Hello.
Online.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning, panel members and presenters. I wish to place on record my strong support for the proposal development application for the revitalization of the Glengarry Shopping Centre. The existing centre is in a state of serious decline and no longer provides basic services expected by the community. It is outdated, underutilized, and fails to deliver quality retail, cafe, or dining options. The inclusion of Woolworths Supermarket in this proposal will provide essential convenience and choice, while the addition of restaurants and cafes will finally create a vibrant hub for residents and also provide much needed services to the adjoining hospital and health precinct on Arnisdale Road. However, I would also emphasize that the redevelopment of the centre must be complemented by strategic planning measures in the immediate surrounding area. Specifically, Glengarry Road urgently requires rezoning from R20 to R40. Without this step, the opportunity for meaningful housing growth around this key activity centre will be lost. This area is ideally suited to higher density housing. It is located next to a major hospital and multiple health and childcare services. It is within close proximity to Warwick train station, and it is serviced by strong bus connections. Allowing R40 in rezoning will encourage new dwellings close to employment, public transport, and local shopping, which is exactly what our city needs in the face of a severe housing shortage. It is concerning that while the Valley Road has recently been rezoned, Glengarry Road was inexplicably excluded, despite being equally, if not more, suitable. This inconsistency should be urgently corrected. The community cannot afford piecemeal decisions that ignore clear housing demands and the logical expansion on density near revitalized centers. In closing, I strongly support the application and urge the panel and the City of Joondalup to take the opportunity not only to approve the long overdue redevelopment of Glengarry Shopping Centre, but also to commit to rezoning Glengarry Road to R40. This will deliver the revitalization, housing supply, and long-term sustainability that our community urgently requires. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Panel members, are there any questions of the presenter? If not, thank you, Rosa.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And move on to Luke Jackson, or Lee Jackson, sorry.
Good morning. My name is Lee Jackson and I'm a local business owner here in Duncraig. I run a health-focused smoothie and tea bar that serves both locals and visitors to the shopping centre. As someone who spends time in the centre every day, I can say with confidence that this facility is tired and outdated. The redevelopment is long overdue and will help revitalise the area, making it a place people actually want to visit and support. My business attracts a younger demographic and young families, which make up a large part of the Duncraig community. At the moment, the centre doesn't really offer much for them. This redevelopment, especially with Woolworths as an anchor tenant, will create a more vibrant and welcoming hub that appeals to this group. For local businesses like mine, the increase in foot traffic will mean more opportunities to connect with new customers, create jobs, and keep residents shopping locally rather than going elsewhere. I strongly support this redevelopment and believe it will deliver real benefits to both residents and businesses like myself. Thank you for considering the voices of local operators like myself, and I look forward to seeing the project come to life.
Thank you, Lee. Panel members, any questions of Ms. Jackson? No, thank you very much for your presentation. Rosemary Person is the next presenter online.
Good morning, members of the panel. My name is Rosemary and I speak today as both a long-time resident of Duncraig and a current tenant of Glengarry Shopping Centre. I am here to express my strong support for the proposed redevelopment. This isn't just about an upgrade of a building, it's about revitalising an important part of our community. The centre has been quiet, dated and neglected, not just recently, but long before Woolworths came forward with their proposal. As tenants, we've seen foot traffic steadily decline, and many businesses, some here for decades, have had to make the heartbreaking decision to close or relocate. If this development doesn't go ahead, the centre will continue to empty out, leaving behind a shell that no longer services our community. Duncraig is changing. Young families are moving in. The population is growing, and yet many locals still travel to centres like Warwick just to do their weekly shop. This centre has the potential to meet those needs right here at home. The redevelopment will also create local jobs during the construction and after for benefits not only Duncraig but the surrounding suburbs as well. From a safety perspective, the new design will level with the main road, which is a huge improvement, especially for the elderly residents and the families with young children. Most importantly, we've received overwhelming support from customers and fellow residents who are excited about the long overdue change. Many tenants, myself included, are willing to relocate, even temporarily, to step away from business we've poured years into because we believe the future of this centre and what it can offer for the community. We respectfully ask the panel to consider the broader needs of the community than a small minority of those opposed the project. This redevelopment gives Duncraig something to be proud of: safe, vibrant, modern centre that reflects who we are and where we are going. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Is there any questions of the presenter? Not, thank you. We'll move on to the next presenter. Darren Cooper, please.
Thank you. Good morning, panel members. I live in Duncraig, and in fact, I've spent most of my life here. Glengarry Shopping Centre is one of my 2 local centres. Over the years, I've watched the Glengarry Shopping Centre slowly deteriorate and lose the status it once had as a vibrant community hub. I believe the vast majority of the local community now want this centre redeveloped, and I think the sort of development being proposed is exactly what's needed and is generally well supported by the local community, in spite of what a small number of previous speakers may have suggested. I'm just going to briefly share a few slides if I can. Hopefully you can see that on screen. I see this support strongly evidenced with every post on the local community Facebook pages. A very small group of residents have, on numerous occasions, posted on these pages looking to organise opposition to the development. These posts usually include emotive language such as Woolworths wants to build a monster facility that could change our lovely neighbourhood forever, and urging people to sign a petition against the development. Predictably, the reaction to these posts doesn't go as they expect. The weight of local support for this proposal is clearly evident, with the comments attracting the most likes, saying things like, "Honestly, I think it's needed. The area behind Hungry Jack's is terrible. Having shops and cafes open will open up a lot more social interactions and outings. I'm all for it personally. The extra amenity will be excellent and will mean more small businesses can open in our community. And it's definitely for the best. Can't wait for the new facility to be open." I find the main comment on this slide really insightful, and I think it's relevant to today's deliberations. I live 400 metres away from the Glengarry shops, and I'm all for it. This will be a fantastic upgrade for the community and is long overdue. Remember, you can also put in a submission expressing your support for the proposal. It doesn't take long, and we know that in general, people are much less likely to make a positive submission than a negative one, so it's important to make your voice heard. Don't let a small group drown out the silent majority. This wasn't just a one-off Facebook post. There's been a series of them. And in fact, over just this last weekend, there was an attempt to organise an on-site rally against the proposal. Once again, the community spoke loudly, but in support of this proposal. And you can see that from this comment, which attracted the most likes. The centre is in major need of an upgrade. It is very old and run down. Trucks of all sizes travel on all roads around Duncraig, past lots of parks and schools. No one is kicking up a fuss there. It's a silly point. The trucks will not be doing anything other than driving up Glengarry, turning onto Culloden and then into the loading dock, which is much safer than the way trucks unload in the parking lot at the moment, which is very unsafe. "Knock it down and get on with it" was the second most popular comment, and one of the current retailers sums it up nicely. Having had a shop at Glengarry Shopping Centre for 24 years, it will be tough, but is needed. Once you read through the Facebook comments, the concerns really come down to traffic movement, and in particular, the proposal for a loading dock accessed off Culloden Road. Indeed, the promoters of the petition against the development have been using this graphic you can see here to organise opposition. And you can clearly see the concern expressed in the accompanying comment. Supposedly, there'll be hundreds of truck movements affecting local residents and causing chaos on local streets, putting kids and dogs at risk. I suggest to you that the reality is very different. Firstly, the traffic impact assessment, the traffic management plan, and the proposed curbing configuration are all designed to ensure that the delivery trucks can only enter the loading dock via a right turn off Culloden Road. Therefore, if we ignore the property on the corner of Glengarry Drive, this proposal potentially impacts a grand total of 4 properties. I note that one of these 4 properties sold less than 2 weeks ago, whilst this proposal has been on foot and in the public domain, and in doing so, more than doubled its sale price from 10 years ago. Given this and the strong support for this proposal from the local community, I really don't think this loading dock issue is much of a problem. And in fact, the western portion of Culloden Road is already impacted by delivery truck movement and unloading activities. This slide shows a screen grab from Google Street View, which is obviously taken on a random day and at a random time. Truck movements.
Aaron, your time is up. Could you please wrap up in a...
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
Truck movements already happen at the shopping centre, the rear of the shopping centre, more frequently than any might care to admit. And so I believe that formalising this via a proper traffic management plan, line marking, curbing, etc., is a far better outcome to what's being experienced currently. Let me acknowledge there's a low level of opposition to this project, but I believe that the weight of community support is for it. And hopefully this deputation has given you insight into the views of the silent majority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any questions of Mr. Cooper from the panel? Yes, Councillor Pizzi.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Cooper, do you think that the misuse of Culloden now by trucks is an excuse to continue that misuse? Do you think it would be better to make sure that the road is used in its correct way, how it's proposed to be used by WA Main Roads in future plans?
No, I disagree with the premise of the question. I think the question basically says, do I think the misuse of the road at the moment is an excuse for the continued misuse? And what I'm suggesting is the misuse of the road at the moment represents a logical place to load and unload to the shopping centre. And I'm suggesting it should be formalised in a proper, regularised and safe way.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Cooper. We'll move on to the next presenter from Hamish Charlie, Mason Harrison. Now we have a number of presenters, opponents. Do you wish to make 3 minutes each? Okay, thank you. So in Mason Harrison, Sam Laybutt, Chris Nolan, is that all?
We do have Jake Lynch from Location IQ online as well.
Okay, so all right, thank you.
Not making a deputation, but available for questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, so these
Thank you, presiding member, and thank you, panel. Great to be here today to show this project. And it's great to see the commentary on the project. I think I've got a number of slides here, but I'll just talk to the main key points that we'd like to talk to regarding the architectural design, and then other deputations will talk to other aspects of the project that have been raised. I think, as was mentioned in a couple of the previous comments, this is an existing centre we are dealing with, and it brings with it some interesting opportunities and some challenges. The site is a steeply sloping site. It's currently buried. If I go to the next slide. Oh, I pushed the wrong button, I think. There we go. So the current condition is it doesn't really interface with anything at the moment. It's buried as an insular development. So from the get-go, the intent was with the architectural response was to bring it up to the street, make it a more habitable environment to walk around and into the centre, rather than having to, stop at the bus and walk down some dodgy stairs or ramps or walk around through the car park to get to this centre. So the whole intent was to raise and interface with the street. So instead of having a inward facing development, we had something which started to really create a more street welcoming environment, safe for pedestrians to walk around Arnisdale Road, Glengarry Road, and then do their daily shop. And also in that, it also brought in the ability to put in undercroft parking, which is better amenity for everyone, gets most of the cars off grade. We did with some slack parking out the front. And then while we were looking at that as well, the acknowledgement that Glengarry Drive and Arnisdale Road really is our more urban edge. And we do have the residents at Culloden Road, which we were considering from the outset at the beginning. And there was a number of conversations like, how do we treat this resi edge? Is it we give it some light activation or do we make it fully private? And it was very clear from after community engagement and what have you, that there was a very deep desire to have that as very private frontage. So while originally we did have some windows and what have you facing onto Culloden Road, we have now made sure that that wall is very passive. All the activity is on Arnisdale and Glengarry Drive. We're trying to preserve as much landscape as we can. And so as we develop the design, trying to keep as many trees as possible. And where we're not preserving trees, we'll be reinstating new ones once the development is complete within the reserve on Culloden Drive. So you can see in these imagery that all the activity is facing towards the existing development, Arnisdale, trying to give more built form presence on Arnisdale Road and a very accessible environment, directly accessible from bus stops and street and what have you. And then on the bottom image there is the view from Culloden Drive, where we're keeping a very passive facade as opposed to Arnisdale and Glengarry Drive. I've got a number of slides in this pack. I think they're here regarding plans. And the loading. I just thought we'd talk quickly on this in terms of changes we've made, which will be talked about with traffic. But you can see Culloden Road, we don't have very little active facade on this street. It is primarily just passive facade and landscaping. All our activation is up on the upper level at ground floor, Arnisdale and elevations. I think there was a couple of concerns about light pollution and what have you on the facade facing Culloden Road. What you can see here is a very passive facade. We've gone through, we worked through with the council in terms of materiality on this facade. We originally started with a very mute palette, greys and off-whites. The intent being that landscape would be the primary feature. So you'd be looking primarily at green, lush landscape. There's a desire to bring in a bit more textural changes and what have you. So we worked with the council and the DRP and we added in some varying textures and colours with the intent that they will complement the landscape when it grows in front. On this image, I'm not sure if the pointer works. You can see the exposed car parking is on the upper end of the elevation. It's kind of doing a pointer. Yeah, so if you, oh, got a point. So at the moment, all of this is pretty much enclosed through here, and we do have some open air so we can get some natural ventilation to help with the ventilation of the car parking through here. So there is some exposed car parking here. That's got a mesh screening in front of it, and it's actually, you can see that's the ground line through here. So it's actually behind a parapet. So these cars here are fully concealed because you've got almost a couple of meters at 1.5 meters or so there, and then these ones. So you're not going to get many lights or anything coming in from the street. It's behind mesh screening and landscape. So there has been a conscious effort to really just pull back any activity on this street to respond to the desire to keep Culloden Road private. And with that, I think I'll just open to any questions or on to the next. Yep.
Still got a few minutes to go.
Sorry, do we have a presentation?
Just getting it up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, panel members, for the opportunity to address the panel.
We'll ask questions once you've done your complete presentation.
So my name's Sam Lobart. I'm the traffic engineer on the project. We've heard a lot from the RAR and from presenters today about the amenity of the area, particularly considering the truck movements that are required to service the retail uses. There's talk about this existing shopping centre having been there since the 1970s and a desire to retain the existing amenities. So when the panel is considering the merits of this application, I thought it was very important to get an understanding of what is the existing amenity. So I wanted to start my presentation with a very short video. This is on Arnisdale Road, and this is a truck. Is it playing? This is a truck servicing the existing IGA loading dock that has pulled into another property's driveway, reversed across Arnisdale Road and reversed into the site. So this is the existing loading arrangements on Arnisdale Road. See, substandard. The next slide shows a picture on the left of the IGA loading dock. So that truck's reversed in all the way there. You can see that there's no big, the loading dock's not enclosed. It's open air. There's no big noise wall. Behind the camera, there is a chain link fence to the private hospital. So the existing situation, this is the amenity that we're talking about. On the right-hand side, you can see the same Google Street View image that Mr. Cooper showed in his deputation, showing that even with the existing loading arrangements, trucks still use Culloden Road. So this is the existing amenity that we're starting with. In comparison, the proposed development is designed in what we would say would be best practice. We have the larger vehicles that are required to service a full line supermarket approaching the site in one direction, making left turns off the major road into Culloden Road, a right turn into the site, a single reversing movement inside the dock, and then exiting in the other direction. We've maximised the use of one-way movements and left turns to minimise any impacts. The smaller dock, which is intended to service IGA or other smaller supermarket, that's accessed from Arnisdale Road and uses smaller trucks. Woolworths is a highly sophisticated, professionally managed logistics operation. Their trucks have defined delivery routes. They're programmed, they're coordinated with other stores. They will arrive using a programmed delivery management route. There is no prospect of a Woolworths delivery vehicle arriving at Duncraig, unsure where to go, circulating around local streets, as some of the presenters seem to have indicated. When we're talking amenity as well, the RAR seems to make an argument that Glengarry Drive is unsuitable for the use by trucks, and that we've heard references to main roads not allowing trucks on Glengarry Drive. To make it very clear for the panel, these are as of right vehicles. They don't require any special permits to travel on public roads, but also the design of the access routes is completely in accordance with current guidelines. So when we talk about a 1970 shopping centre, we're actually assessing a 2025 development in accordance with current guidelines. Glengarry Drive is a dual carriageway carrying 11,000 vehicles per day plus. It's a very busy road. 3 truck movements per day in one direction on Glengarry Drive will have no material impact, none at all. On Culloden Road, you have a 9-metre wide single carriageway, which is about 50% wider than new residential streets that are built under livable neighbourhoods. It's perfectly suitable for the movement of 3 trucks per day, 25 trucks per week. These are very, very small numbers to move in one direction along this road, past a total of 6 properties. Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. There we go. Sorry, passing a total of 6 properties, being very generous to include number 6 there as it turns right into the site. As Mr. Harrison showed in his submission, there is a curved driveway, which means that if a truck somehow approached from the wrong direction, it wouldn't physically be able to get into the site. There would be no advantage to truck drivers using Culloden Road as they do now, evidence on...
Your time is up. Can you please wrap up?
Sure. Appreciate that from the panel. Just to address the road hierarchy, there's a bit of what I would say misunderstanding around the road hierarchy. Wanted to make it very clear for the panel that Glengarry Drive's currently called a local distributor. It carries volumes that are much higher. Clearly, you can see in the road hierarchy table that heavy vehicles are permitted, preferably to service properties, which is the purpose of this. This is not a freight depot. This is not an industrial area. Local properties.
Fair on everybody else. We have seen it and we have reviewed the submission and we understand it. So thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Nolan from Urbis, your time.
Good morning, just panel members. My name is Chris Nolan, Regional Director at Urbis. Today, I'm going to zero in on the reasons for refusal, which the City of Joondalup and their RAR have lent on Clause 67, provisions M, N, S, T, X, and Y. And interestingly, they have focused those provisions primarily as it relates to the new Culloden service access. In terms of provision M, which generally talks about compatibility of the development within its setting, for all intents and purposes, this is a neighbourhood centre being replaced with a neighbourhood centre. The access via Culloden is new, but ultimately only serving, as Sam mentioned, 2 to 3 large delivery movements in only. These movements will be managed via a delivery management plan to ensure impact on Culloden residents and surrounds is minimised as much as it can be. Aside from access, the proposal is largely compliant. From a height perspective, there are a few minor setback variations to a couple of the streets, but the building has been orientated to Glengarry and Arnisdale. It presents a quieter but attractive interface to the residential development of Culloden. The design has been through the city's DRP and generally supported. And interestingly, in the context of SPP context, was very much supported. In terms of amenity as it relates to environment, character, and social impact, noise has been mentioned a fair bit today. The acoustic assessment that we've undertaken suggests noise makes compliance. The city have offered up a condition as well, a post-occupancy noise assessment, which Woolworths would be more than happy to do. In terms of character, I've talked about that. It's suburban character, DRP supported it with the reality and scale is given. And socially, whilst it is noted that there is an impact on this additional service access to the Culloden residents, I would have thought that the social benefits of a new and refreshed neighbourhood centre would outweigh these 2 to 3 truck movements a day. Yes, adequacy of access, egress, loading, and manoeuvring. As has been seen in the imagery from a few people, the current service vehicle and loading access arrangements could be considered agricultural at best and unsafe at worst. The proposed design allows for a vastly improved arrangement with the 12.5 metre vehicles serviced by Arnisdale and the larger 19 metre semis via Culloden, again, in only. These arrangements and the separation of the 2 loading areas and entry points have been driven by a desire for fewer truck movements in the context of amenity, road safety in the context of manoeuvring, and ease of programming so as to avoid stacking. Alternative arrangements, including turntables, shared docks, smaller vehicles, have all been examined, but on balance, we've come up with a solution that we think works best for everyone. Sam's mentioned in the context of provision T, capacity of the road system. All of the roads, local distributor, local access streets have the capacity to accommodate the additional vehicles. The 19 metre vehicles are as of right. The aim is to kind of get these vehicles off Glengarry, down Culloden, into the centre, out of the centre as quickly as possible without actually running through the suburb. And this can be managed by a delivery management plan. The last provisions, X and Y, community impact and submissions. Again, the impact of the new access from Culloden is acknowledged, but the reasons for this secondary and relatively infrequently used access point are considered to be reasonable offsets to the impact of this change to the local environment. We acknowledge, and I wouldn't usually go down this path, but we acknowledge a large number of negative submitters for the project via the formal advertising period. I do, however, and I think it's come through today, but there is equal, if not greater, positive community sentiment for this project as there is negative.
Okay, your time is up. Thank you. Please wrap up.
2 seconds.
Seconds, 1, 2.
Look, we believe this is going to be a positive project for the Duncraig community. We've seen this before with Woolworths projects. Mount Pleasant, Highgate, Inglewood, Clarkson. There is often a little bit of community angst, but these things do become amazing community.
Okay, I'll have to stop there just to be fair on everyone. We understand what you're saying. Okay, well, thank you. I don't think we've got any more presenters either online, offline, or in here. Is that correct? Okay. Yes, we've got some written submissions Kate Mansfield against, Jeff Boyland against, and Craig Wallace from Lavin Legal in support, which we have all had and had the opportunity to read. So that being the case, I'll open up for the panel to ask questions of the presenters, and Councillor Hill, you first off the rank.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm not sure who would like to answer these questions, but any of you could do so. So I noticed in the minutes of the Joondalup Design Reference Panel meeting, there doesn't seem to be much reference to the issue of the loading dock, which seems to be one of the main issues of concern today. I'm just seeking to confirm whether the design layout that was presented when it was discussed with JDRP was as we see it today, or has it changed since?
Well, there was a previous one which had the two-way access on Culloden, and it had, it didn't have the modified curbing and everything. So it's actually probably the more harsh version than what we've ended up with today in terms of we've done the softening from community consultation.
Yeah, but I guess my conclusion is, my assumption is that the Joondalup Design Review Panel didn't really pick up and address significantly on the loading dock issue.
No, not on the.
If I may continue through
Sure.
the Chair. Regarding the layout showing the trucks routing through Glengarry and turning left into Gordon, I mean, I did visit the location yesterday. It occurred to me that I was wondering why it was never proposed to basically have the trucks routing from Arnisdale turning left and going one way through and out through Gordon, which would avoid the Glengarry issue. But I assume that's because the location of the loading dock has to be where it has to be, and the truck would be facing in the wrong direction. I'd appreciate if you just comment on whether that was ever considered as might resolve some of the issues.
Yes, so I mean, I'll let you talk to specific traffic things, but yes, in principle, where the loading dock is located is in terms of where it needs to be from a shop perspective for this, and enabled us to also get the other side of the loading dock for the other retailers is on the southern side, because they needed an access point to get into their dock. So it facilitated the loading and waste strategy for the entire development, having it the other way around. There is access and, you know, where you put the lifts and what have you. So it was the most efficient way to deal with the space available. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And if I may ask a final question through the Chair. This just relates to the comments that have been raised by in the RAR about the possibility of trucks using adjacent streets to do a circuit away, and I note your comments earlier that that wouldn't be possible. I just would like to re-emphasize that as a question. Could you just confirm how you're going to make sure that trucks don't go around the other side streets, that they go in Gordon and out on Arnisdale without going?
Well, yeah, you can answer that.
Thank you for the question, member. To be very clear, the trucks that enter from Culloden Road are only related to the Woolworths loading dock, right? So that the Woolworths controls those, and as I mentioned in my presentation, they run a very sophisticated, professionally managed logistics exercise to move product from their distribution centres to the supermarket loading dock. They use their own sort of in-house logistics. They use their own drivers, etc. They have a lot of control over those pre-programmed routes. Secondary to that is that we anticipate if an approval is granted by the panel, it would be accompanied with a condition requiring a delivery management plan, which would need to be agreed to by the city and then adhered to for the life of the development. That delivery management plan will clearly specify the route that trucks must take when approaching the site. And from an examination of the surrounding road network, I don't think it is particularly onerous or out of the way to expect that trucks who will be on the Mitchell Freeway to take Hepburn Avenue exit, turn left to reach the site. It's not as if they're going kilometres or tens of kilometres out of their way. It's a very efficient route. So I think the combination of those factors will ensure that the impact of the development is as stated in the DA and the presentations that we've made today.
Thank you. Councillor Pizzey, please.
Thank you. I have a few questions on similar line. So you noted that the road hierarchy for WA road types and criteria specifically states that heavy vehicles are permitted on access roads. It does state, though, only to service residential properties, and I'll say it states only, not preferably. So no matter how you try and get around that point, even if you say that only 6 households will be affected. The criteria from the road hierarchy does not say, don't worry about this as long as there are only a few households affected. With this understanding, if smaller vehicles were the preferred option by DAP, what changes do you think would be required? Would it be a delivery management plan or a full design change to allow smaller trucks to only enter from the south, and or the consideration of the smaller trucks?
Thank you for the question, member. I'll deal with that. So I'll respond to that in two parts. The first part, I don't agree with the premise that the road hierarchy criteria says that trucks should not use access streets or local distributors. And I don't agree that it says that they should only use them to service residential properties. So the road hierarchy applies to all parts of WA, not just residential areas. This is not livable neighbourhoods, which is a residential design policy document. So if you have an industrial area, all the streets are access streets, right? In this scenario, an access road under the road hierarchy says heavy vehicles are permitted only to service properties. The intent of the road hierarchy is that direct property access to the higher order roads is discouraged. So any vehicle that needs to access a property from a higher order road must turn onto a lower order road, which would be an access street, to then enter the property. And our delivery management strategy is entirely consistent with that. The truck turns from the local distributor onto the access road and then enters a property that abuts the access road. So there is no truck movement that is through traffic, i.e. travelling along an access street to a property that is not on that access street. So in my view as a traffic engineer, this proposal is entirely consistent with the road hierarchy. And so hopefully the panel sort of understands that, because there has been some commentary around the road hierarchy. Second element of your question, Councillor, was what changes would be required to the proposal to accommodate smaller trucks? So in three parts, if the existing delivery route was maintained, but 12.5 metre trucks were used instead of 19 metres, essentially what would happen would be the amenity impact would be double. Obviously, the delivery capacity of a smaller truck is significantly smaller. Woolworths estimate generally there's a doubling of truck movements if they're required to use the rigid trucks, right? So we'd go from 3 trucks a day to 6 trucks a day on Culloden Road. The second part was, could these smaller trucks use Arnisdale Road? Mr. Harrison explained that the design of the loading dock and the ability to have separate loading docks for the large supermarket and the other users means that trucks entering from Arnisdale Road to reach the Woolworths dock are facing the wrong direction. So they need to be able to turn around inside the site. Now, we don't have a large loading dock. We don't have room for a turntable, and we don't have room for 3-point turns. In my presentation, on one of the slides, you can see a slide titled Alternatives, and it shows what would be required for a turntable and for a 3-point turn, which is actually a 9-point turn around a vehicle. So we've also got the complication there that general public driving their cars are exiting the hospital car park along an easement for public access to get to Arnisdale Road. So we can't have trucks reversing with their back to general public coming out of that car park. That is something that wouldn't pass any sort of road safety or workplace safety assessment. On the turntable, the minimum that would be required would be that this building envelope extends all the way to the eastern boundary of the site. And I'm not an architect, Mason's the expert here, but I don't think that is a good outcome based on some of the submissions I've heard this morning. Secondly, because of the requirement to maintain public access from the hospital car park, the turntable couldn't be centrally located within an expanded loading dock. It would have to be located in the Woolworths dock. It would therefore overlap with the truck parking area. It would overlap with drivers coming out of the hospital car park. In summary, it's just not feasible without a complete redesign of the development. And I will say that the applicant team has invested a considerable amount of time and effort prior to submission of the DA and following receipt and full consideration of many of the public comments and city's assessment to see whether there was an alternative option. And I think that the changes that have been made in terms of clarifying that we don't ever want trucks to exit onto Culloden Road and we don't want them to approach from Carlisle or Kinloch, and making sure that can't happen is the best outcome, and the impacts are manageable.
Thank you. Councillor Pizzi, any further questions?
Yes, please. So you've stated that the amenity impact would be double that to the residential area. But if we got smaller trucks to service the Woolworths and they were able to enter then on Arnisdale Road, that would not be impacting residential because it's more industrial on Arnisdale side, it's more commercial. And to allow this for smaller trucks to enter of Arnisdale Road, not the larger trucks. So I'm assuming you've said it would be a full design change, so possible if this was deferred today, correct?
Look, so two parts here. Just from a traffic perspective, if smaller trucks were to enter from Arnisdale to access the Woolworths dock, it would require a loading dock, which is probably 2.5 to 3 times as large as it currently is. And then I'd pass to Mason to answer about the impacts on the architectural.
Yeah, and then got it in one. It's a significantly larger loading dock, and there would be more movements happening within that dock to get the vehicles where they need. Like Sam was saying, currently it's just one move in and out. We'd probably also have to give up further space for making sure that trucks waiting for a turntable to spin around have somewhere to sit and idle in a safe spot. So we think fundamentally on a development of this nature, the impost on of what was be required to get this to occur, to simply stop a simple one-way movement into a dock is, yeah, the balance isn't there like we would typically do on a centre like this.
I can ask another question if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Am I correct in saying that it's not unprecedented for Woolworths to use smaller trucks in places that benefits a better plan and layout? So in the past, Woolworths have used smaller trucks and do use smaller trucks for delivery, namely off Canning Highway and places like that.
Yes, there are examples of where we have done that. But yeah, as we've said previously, just when we were looking at the movements required to get big trucks into a dock from our side. So remember as well, we're dealing with level differences. It's not all those sites were all on grade. They're relatively flat sites. This is not a flat site. So that we're trying to navigate access and entry points. We've got an easement from the hospital. So trying to get the trucks in and that respects the current datums of the easements and the property lines. This was the most effective use of the area that was available to us for us to try and get a dock per Mount Pleasant or Highgate would, as we're saying, would be a significantly larger dock than what we have at those centres.
Could I just add to that response? Highgate and Inglewood are actually my two local Woolworths stores, and I'm very familiar with those sites. One of the key differences is those sites are smaller stores with a single supermarket tenant. So there's a single loading dock that just serves Woolworths. Experience has shown to Woolworths that they cannot share a dock with multiple users. And here the big difference is that this redevelopment incorporates a second supermarket. At the moment, there's an IGA on site. So when you've got that, you can't have two major supermarkets using the same loading dock, which requires then a design that accommodates two loading docks and complicates the provisions of things like turntables, both from a geometric fitting everything within the architectural footprint perspective, but also a management perspective, ensuring that the loading dock can be managed efficiently and safely for the people who need to use it. So there is a fundamental difference between this proposal and some of those smaller single retail stores.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Disley?
So you did say earlier that Woolworths are very good when it comes to they control the management of their trucks and the movement of those trucks when transporting goods to Woolworths very well and very precisely. So now you're saying that that's not manageable in a loading bay, using it with other people, or though before you said that Woolworths do manage this very well and can. Also, a comment maybe is that I I disagree on you that the intent of main roads.
Councillor, rather than debating the
Okay.
do you have questions, please? Because time is getting on.
Do you think that main roads to have an access roads for residential only, that part of the intent of that is to stop heavy traffic and vehicles using residential roads to access commercial properties?
No, Councillor, I disagree with that premise. The intent of the road hierarchy, as I mentioned before, is to reduce the amount of direct property access on higher order roads and encourage and design so those vehicles turn onto a lower order road like an access street to directly enter a property. There is nothing in the in the road hierarchy that specifies that truck movement should be for residents only. And as I said before, access streets are the classification given to streets within industrial areas and so on. Also in livable neighbourhoods, there's been some some information going around from submitters that livable neighbourhood prevents trucks from using residential streets, but it's actually very clear in livable neighbourhoods when it refers to intersection design that intersections between arterial routes such as Glengarry Drive and access streets such as Culloden Road, the design vehicle is an articulated vehicle turning from Glengarry Drive into Culloden Road. So I think it's clear even in livable neighbourhoods that their provision should be made for these vehicles to service properties that access directly to access streets.
I'll add to that. I think in just about every instance with Woolworths, there's a local distributor, a higher road, and then a local access street that essentially gets the access for the delivery vehicles to the shopping centre or supermarket, and then out again. The classic example at the moment that Woolworths is working through Nedlands, Stirling Highway, Florence Road, off Stirling, in and out, and then out back again. The aim is to not be on these local access, lower order roads, for try to minimise that as much as you can. But there's a fundamental requirement to use them just to get to site, because access off the primary street or the higher order roads is problematic for these larger vehicles.
Okay, Councillor Fizzi, have you finished your questions?
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, any other panel members' questions? Yes, Member Hyde.
Thank you. I'll try and group these. I've been scribbling frantically, but I'll try and group them. If we could just stick with the traffic and transport situation at the moment. Just point of clarification, the report that we have got is by Stantec, but I think you announced yourself as from a different firm. Could I just get some clarification that you're still talking around that original analysis as well?
Thank you for the question, member. Yes, I have been brought onto the project following the submission of the DA, but the TIA that was provided as part of the DA package has not changed and has not been updated, so all that information is still current, with the exception of some of those minor clarifications that have been made.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that. My next question is just clarification. It's either between you and Chris or whatever, but there are a number of different references to vehicle movements or semi-movements on Culloden. I think there's talk about 3 movements from Woolworths, but then 2 to 3 movements from Woolworths per day. But then in the response to submissions, there's mention of 10 movements a day on Culloden. You've mostly described this is about Woolworths vehicles only, but then, and it's also referred to in the RAR that some of the material that you submitted with the application talks about other deliveries occasionally and waste trucks as well. So I'm just trying to get clarification if we're talking about 3 movements from Woolworths a day, or if there's a whole other thing that is envisaged.
Thank you for the question, member. It's a really good one because I think it shows that since the DA was submitted, there's been an evolution in the applicant's design for Culloden Road, and that is in response to the public submission. So to clarify today, the current proposal that we're seeking approval for is that the only delivery vehicles entering from Culloden Road will be delivery vehicles for the Woolworths stock, which we estimate to be a maximum of 3 vehicles per day. Mm-hmm. Secondary to that is the waste collection, but only for Woolworths. Again, because of the orientation of the dock, they must enter from Culloden Road, enter the dock and reverse into the Woolies dock. So those are the vehicles that we contemplate using Culloden Road, and we're ensuring that they can only approach from the Glengarry Drive direction. In some of the earlier documentation, there were, I think, 3 staff parking bays on that service corridor. They've been removed in an effort to minimise the number of vehicle movements that could possibly use Culloden Road. There was also some mention that occasional service vehicles might use it. So this might be, where the loading dock requires maintenance or repairs, or machinery inside the supermarket, and they need to access the dock from that direction. But we've taken that out and can make a way for those vehicles to access from Arnisdale Road. If it's a maintenance ute type vehicle, they could turn around. It's the trucks that don't have sufficient room to turn around.
And it would be the waste vehicles for movement a week.
Yes.
Right. You'll note that, and I don't know where we'll end up with this, but in the alternates, condition 13 talks about waste movement to and from Arnisdale. Is that possible?
I think if we look at my submission, the presentation, there's a slide that says alternatives ? As the heading.
Yeah.
I think the swept path movements on the right-hand side of that slide clearly show that a 12.5 metre truck would need 9 turning movements to turn around within the dock. The waste trucks are a bit smaller, and they're fundamentally no different to the waste trucks that use Culloden Road to collect residential waste. But they would require, say, 5 or 7 turning movements instead of 9. We don't think it's really feasible to do it from Arnisdale Road, and the preferred option is definitely for those 4 movements a week to enter from Culloden.
Okay, I just have some more. Sorry. In terms of turning swept paths from Culloden, you investigated a swept path, so obviously there's quite a lot of residential activity on the street. People park on street, albeit a 9.5. Is there still sufficient room for swept paths for the semis coming in on Culloden and turning into the service lane if you've got vehicles parked on both sides of the street?
Yes, absolutely. There's as you mentioned, there's a 9.5 metre wide pavement, or 9 to 9.5. It's very wide and much wider than your usual residential street. And we're definitely satisfied that the truck can access Culloden Road and then access the site even with parked vehicles.
Okay. Further, your draft delivery management plan or strategy, pardon me, as it is called, which was attached to the application, talks really to leaving the detail until you get to detailed design, which is sort of an uncomfortable position for decision makers to be in, not knowing really what's being provided for or approved, particularly given that we've got still some variation there on numbers, which, thank you, you have mostly clarified. In your submission, you do rightly add a dot point to one of the items that, if we did get to that point, you would prefer, which is a delivery route plan. But there's nothing in any of that that sort of confirms the number of visitations per day. How could you respond to that, and what sort of level of certainty can you give at this point that we're not going to go from potentially 3 vehicle movements plus potentially some waste per week to something which is a lot more significant? Because sorry, just to finish off, we don't deal with operators, we deal with the land use.
In terms of the vehicle movements, in terms of the large semis, happy for that to be conditioned as part of that to limit to no more than 3, and then incorporate it as part of the delivery management plan, as well as the routes to ensure that there's no rat running through the other local access streets.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where was I up to? Oh yes, noise. There's some earlier submissions regarding noise and sensitive receptors, and obviously we do have a residential community in proximity, but we also have a hospital and hospice facility. So how has that been taken account of? And there was certainly some question around the use of 10 as being the sort of allowable noise and how practical that was.
Lean on Mason in terms of the new design as opposed to what currently exists in terms of the current loading. So I might hand to Mason in the first instance.
Yeah, so it's a fully enclosed dock with front in access only. So the intent would be once you drive in, you'll be reversing, but you'll be reversing behind a concrete wall. So that's going to mitigate noise. When the acoustic report came through, our acoustic consultant said there was no required change to the boundary to mitigate the noise because we're already doing what was required within the dock, but we are still proposing to at least get put a solid fence in front of the existing mesh fence, which is out the front. To Sam's point with that truck video was missing the noise, but that truck currently reverses all the way down with its beeper on the whole way, and it sits in the dock with its engine running currently. So what we're proposing is a significant increase to amenity and safety as well, because we're not reversing in the public space. We're doing front end movements only, and it's completely enclosed, the area which we're doing.
Okay, thank you. And is there post-development monitoring proposed to ensure that you know, things are within the acceptable environmental regs and commitments made at this point?
100%, and that's referenced in the RAR, and I think came through in the condition. Woolworths are 100% comfortable with an acoustic assessment post occupancy.
Okay, thank you. My last question, please. We heard earlier from one of the submitters, Lateral Planning, around the peer review that they had done, and then also commentary, and I will refer to the city later, but peer review that the city requested on your retail analysis. What comment have you got around the accuracy of that, or how we could rely upon that from a sustainability point of view, please?
100%. I've got Jake Lynch on the line here, and Jake is probably best to answer that question. But I would say that you've got Location IQ, and I think with DPEN, you've got two consultancies that have had a look at this. We've also had a look at the other submission. What we're talking about here is the net impact of around 2,000 square metres of NLA, and that's what Jake has assessed. So with that, I'll hand over to Jake.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Beautiful. Yeah, so I guess to answer the question, the deputations and the submissions from Lateral Element and Deep End, they present sort of conflicting critiques, because ultimately everyone acknowledges that the existing IGAs trade strongly, and that so too would a Woolworths. In my experience, in my opinion, this reinforces rather than undermines the demonstrated case for supermarket need or demand. And I think importantly that the Deep End submission, it doesn't model impacts to the contrary. And even under the alternative assumptions that they've suggested, which largely relate to trading performance, the percentage impacts on the surrounding centres would actually be lower than are initially projected in our net need and net benefit tests. And all centres would continue to trade viably. And I think potentially the most important part here is that the city's independent peer review, which was undertaken by MGA town planners, that further validated our assessment and concluded that impacts would be well within acceptable thresholds. They wouldn't compromise the long-term sustainability of nearby centres, and this was accepted by the city.
All right, thank you. Nothing further from me.
Thank you.
Thank you, presiding member. Question relating to probably clarification. You talked about Woolworths loading dock and only being used by Woolworths. So the balance of the proposed centre, how are deliveries made? Presumably it's off Anderson Road. Can you explain that relationship and the relationship to the hospital in terms of that easement and access across what looks like the delivery dock?
Thank you for the question, member. So the first part of that, we've talked a lot about the Woolworths dock, which is the northern dock. There is a southern dock, which is intended to service the second supermarket on site, as well as other users as needed for both deliveries and waste collection. There is also 2 loading bays marked in the car park. So smaller tenancies who might require deliveries from vans and utes and those size of delivery vehicles can also accept deliveries during the car park, through the car park as well. And then the second element of your question was around the private hospital. So There's currently an easement in place, so it's a legal right of carriageway for traffic exiting the hospital through our loading dock area. So we've taken very, very careful measures to make sure that that safety is maximised. And one of the critical things is the one-way movement in from Culloden out to Arnisdale for the larger trucks, so that they only do reversing movements inside the dock area, which won't be accessible to the public. And for the southern dock, when they do need to turn around to exit to Arnisdale, they do need to do a 3-point turn. However, that is manageable safely because the driver will be facing oncoming traffic from the hospital. Now, this is not a busy emergency department type hospital. This is a very quiet hospital with a small amount of traffic, but to ensure safety, we wanted to make sure that drivers can see each other, stop, adjust their movements as needed, and they can do that safely. In the alternate scenario where a smaller truck needs to turn around to reverse into the Woolies dock, that's just not possible because of the different direction and the number of turning movements that are required.
Okay, so there's no risk that there's additional shopping centre traffic using Collington. It's all will be off Arnisdale.
Yes, that's right. To reiterate, the Culloden access is only for the Woolies dock semi-trailers and their waste collection vehicles to come in.
Thank you. Question about the design of the centre. And you would have heard from concerns about residents in the area. The relationship of the shopping centre boundary to Collington Road. On the face of it, it doesn't seem to integrate with what is potential for walkable catchment to the shopping centre. There is a wall landscape and obviously features to try and minimise impact. Can you explain the rationale for not integrating that part of what is a catchment to that boundary?
Yeah, so when we were approaching design originally, we were trying to establish what was the most appropriate response to Culloden. So there's the existing path that goes down outside the boundary, which leads into the corner and circles the site. And at one point, we were looking at having a part of the retail facing the street, and also we had an entrance from the street path network into our centre to take you directly to the travelator up into the retail store. I think after we'd been out to the community, there was a lot of concern about increasing traffic on the street, increasing movements on the street and what have you. So we thought at the moment, going to the centre, you basically have to walk up to Glengarry Drive anyway to walk into the centre, because the path is up near where the Nando's is. So we thought, well, we'll just continue that journey and enter from a formal access off Glengarry Drive for pedestrians through that area, and then make it very clear that it's not just meant for general public access down the Culloden roadside. It's purely private residence area only, where it's walk up and down the street and minimise traffic down Culloden. So that was the primary focus in terms of.
So just for clarification, there will be a footpath along that southern boundary of the road?
Yes, there's currently a footpath there. Yes, correct.
The other question I had was, and I'm not suggesting a position, but in the alternative recommendation, the condition 24 talks about limiting the centre to 399, and it's a question put to the city's officers. Are you aware of that? And is that something that's comfortable with?
Yes, we're comfortable with it. That's been in consultation with the city. The local commercial strategy has historically talked about 4,000 square metres for Glengarry. We acknowledge there is probably other little bits and pieces of retail on the periphery. We're comfortable with that number in terms of NLA and calculations. So that was in consultation with the city.
Just to follow on, presiding member, if that result in any modification to the design?
I believe so.
Thank you, presiding member. I think that's it.
That's it. Okay, I've got a few questions. The Woolworths store, you said that Inglewood and Highgate are smaller footprints. By how much? size are they, do you?
In terms of small
To give me an
size.
impression.
Well, definitely in terms of specialty area, they're much smaller. They've only got 100 or 200 square meters worth of specialty areas associated with those, whereas we are providing full amenity at this centre. So that's the additional. I think the actual stores themselves, yeah, they're very similar size. So we're talking a couple of 100 square meters from recollection, if anything, from the.
So from the Woolworths, Inglewood and Highgate and this one.
Yeah, it's more the specialties and the other retailers associated with those developments.
Okay.
Sorry, presiding member. Highgate has a single cafe, tiny little cafe in it. And there's a childcare centre on the top floor, aside from the supermarket. So there's very, very small in comparison to this. And Inglewood as well, there's a couple of, ice cream shop, really good Conti rolls on the Beaufort Street frontage, but there's not much else there. It really is a standalone supermarket, and that's very different to this.
Familiar with both of those. I go to both of them, but I was just looking at what this footprint would be like. You said that the delivery management strategy you would prepare in consultation with council to reinforce the number of vehicle movements, servicing vehicle movements. How do you enforce that to the tenants? Because they'll have to be involved with that. It's not just Woolworths on this site, there'll be others. How do you enforce the movements? I mean, to save, people, local vehicles, cars and that, will try and get in through the driveway off of Culloden. But that's, if you've got a sign there saying no entry, how do you enforce others to comply with that?
We have got Woolworths here who might be better to answer that question, but in terms of centre management.
Yeah, we have a centre manager, so we have a centre manager office. Colliers generally manage all our centres, and if anything like that happens, we'll generally give a breach notice to the tenants and then issue a fine. And they don't do it; they just know that they're not allowed to do that from a safety perspective.
I'll also give another example. Mount Pleasant last year, there was an issue, and from a delivery management plan perspective and non-compliance issue, I got a phone call 5 years later for that to actually be resolved in terms of essentially bad behaviour from the tenant. So it is managed.
Okay, thank you. Now, there were some submissions regarding the aesthetics of the building, and it's in the eye of the beholder in a lot of instances, but what are things that you're prepared to look at? There's a condition requiring some further scope on the aesthetics. I think a colour palette and so forth has to be provided to council satisfaction, and you're prepared to make some further changes to better the aesthetics, as it were.
Yes, and that's generally a standard condition, and happy to work with the city and its DRP on the colours and materials palette. The one thing that has been discussed with the city is an electric gate to the Culloden access. We think it's manageable. If the panel are of the view that would have some benefit from an amenity perspective or from an architectural perspective, that's something that we are willing to consider. We made that clear to the city as well. So that is something that we put out there.
Yep, okay. The light spill situation, how do you counter the concerns of the residents about light spill from a development like this?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, because it's a very passive facade across the entire frontage, it's not going to be lit with floodlights or anything. There's no need for that side of the centre to be lit. As mentioned, we was acknowledging it's on a private street. So we have a signboard on there, but that would not be lit at unreasonable hours, or it can be not lit at all. And in terms of light spill, I think for the residents, probably less than what they currently get, because currently they have an open car park facing them, whereas now they will not have that because the car park is on the other side of the development and internalized within the undercroft. And the undercroft lighting, as mentioned, I showed the facade. There's only those two sections where there will be lit some light coming from that car park. It will not be lit 24/7, and it is behind mesh and landscapes. We don't think it will have significant impact.
Okay, thank you. There was a comment in the noise management, the acoustics report about the doors closing and clanging. I found that interesting. I would have thought there would be buffers that you could put on doors.
I'll make sure our guys specify something decent.
It was probably for the council officers if it gets to that. And shade structures. They're always things that shoppers like to see. Mention those.
Yeah, thanks, presiding member. I think the shade structures we did they were off and on our development at one point. So because we got so many undercroft car parking bays, so Woolworths typically runs with about 2/3 or so covered parking bays, which we achieved with the undercroft area. At one point, we were considering shade sails on the upper structure, but we realized that actually in terms of just a visual amenity for Glengarry with the shop fronts and what have you, we thought it would just be nicer. They've already got the amenity for the covered parking at the lower level. So you get better visual connection to the center by not having those canopies on would be like the 30 odd bays at the top level. So that was the touch.
Okay. All right, I've got no further questions. Thank you for your presentation and answers. We will now move on to the city staff. We may come back to you as we come back to present it later. So we'll move on to the city staff. But before we do that, I'm sure some people like it. So what I'm going to do is motion. Second, okay. Those in favour? Unanimous. Okay, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes. For comfort.
Do we have to do a vote back in?
Engineering.
We will now adjourn the meeting at 42, re-adjourn the meeting at 11:42 a.m. Adjourn the meeting again. Okay. Resume the meeting at 11:42 a.m. Okay, we're now at a position where panel are going to ask questions of the city staff. So initially, I would like to give the city staff opportunity to make any observations of what they've heard. Not, I'm sure you'll get enough questions from us. So is there anything burning that you wish to address?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. There's a couple of points that
Can I ask you to speak louder, or perhaps that isn't going to work?
No, can you hear me if I shout at you?
Just the same. So carry on. Obviously,
Okay. Sorry. There's just a couple of points that I'd like to clarify. So the city is supportive of the redevelopment of the centre. I guess our concerns, as it's been outlined in the RAR, relate to the delivery trucks and the use of Culloden Road and potentially other local roads in the area. The centre's been there since the 1970s, and there's never been access to the centre or the hospital since that time. I note the applicant's comments in their presentation that they have a sophisticated logistics operation and all of the deliveries are programmed, and so they could program deliveries to ensure that they were turning left into Culloden Road. The city did request that the applicant provided us with some information so we would be satisfied that that was the case. Unfortunately, that was not provided to us, and so that is something that we had looked to address and looked to consider during our assessment of the proposal. Just in response to the comments around the 3-point turn, so the TIA that was submitted does propose for the IGA trucks to come in forward gear from Arnisdale Road to enter the loading dock, reverse back, and then to do a 3-point turn so they can exit from Arnisdale Road in forward gear again. That's a 12.5 metre fixed rigid vehicle, which indicates that it is possible for a 3-point turn to occur in that loading dock. I think there's some diagrams on page 45 and 47 of the TIA that demonstrate that. I guess also just in response to the potential to reconfigure or redesign the loading dock, we note on the Undercroft plan, there's 12 bays that are on the eastern side of the basement car park. There is a 45 bay surplus, so there is some wriggle room there in terms of the number of parking bays to perhaps widen a portion of that loading dock area to create a little bit more space to make vehicle manoeuvrability a little bit more comfortable if that's something that Woolworths have some concerns with. Just in response to the questions or the comment on the peer review and whether that took into account sales data for other centres in close proximity. So our consultant did contact Lateral Planning to get some information. We were able to obtain some turnovers, I think from 2019 for the Duncraig and Marmion centres. So they were used as the baseline, and then estimates were used for the turnovers, or were based on that baseline for the turnovers for the other centres. And so that's how the review was undertaken. There's just a couple of conditions that I'd like to just make comments on as well, if I may. So condition 10, which relates to the operational and noise management plan, it's mentioned in the report, and I apologise for this. It was always our intent to have in there that all of the service vehicles entered and exited off Arnisdale Road in forward gear. That point has unfortunately fallen off the dot points in that condition. So that's something that if the DAP is of a mind to approve this, that we'd like you to consider in relation to that. Condition 13 relates to the waste management plan, and that does indeed include a point in there that all waste vehicles are to enter and exit from Arnestdale Road, and that includes vehicles for Woolworths. Condition 14, I know there was a question just before around shade structures. So condition 14 relates to a detailed landscaping plan. And as part of that, we've actually requested that that there is a shade structure provided along the central rows of car bays within the at-grade car park, and then trees at a ratio of 1 tree per 4 parking bays along the western row of car parking, and additional landscaping along the eastern row. We had discussions with the applicants and with our landscaping team in-house about those trees being able to be provided in pots. And that's to provide, I guess, some amenity. They're not necessarily going to be full-on shade trees as you would get where you've got the deep soil zone, because it's obviously going to be constructed on top of a car park. But at least we've got an opportunity there to get some planter boxes in, and that'll provide certainly some natural amenity there. The last condition that I just wanted to draw your attention to is condition 18, which relates to an updated TIA. The words "shall be submitted to and approved by the city" appear in that condition twice. And so you may just wish to delete those words where they appeared just before, prior to the commencement of development.
Okay. Panel members, are there any questions of the council staff? Yes, Councillor Hill.
Yes, thank you, Ms Temple, and through you, Chair. If I can just ask something I alluded to earlier, which is the Joondalup Design Reference Panel discussions and their report or minutes, and the fact that it didn't seem to focus on the loading bay issues. I wonder if you could just give me your version of events in terms of what the proposal before the Joondalup Design Reference Panel was, and has it changed significantly, and why do you think that wasn't picked up as a key issue during those discussions? Thank you.
Yeah, look, thanks for the question, and through you, presiding member. So this particular proposal went to the JDRP pre-lodgement, and that was back in, I think, February 2024. As the applicant alluded to in their response, at that time, the design of that access on Culloden Road, it did show two-way. I think there was also a couple of car parking bays in that. There was obviously a number of submissions, and so sorry, when it went to the JDRP, that was pre-lodgement, before a development application, before there was a planning assessment undertaken, before there was any community consultation. And so as a result of planning assessment, community consultation, that's where there was obviously some modifications made to that loading zone. The JDRP review is based on the site, and I guess the design of the development, the functionality of the development, and those sorts of things. And so there certainly wasn't, to my recollection, any discussion about traffic impacts. The JDRP weren't given traffic reports and those sorts of things as part of their review. And so I guess there wasn't a discussion in terms of whether or not service vehicles should be using Culloden Road. They made a point that the location of the delivery dock in the context of the design of the centre was appropriately located, because it was, I guess, off to one side, and so it wasn't requiring trucks to move through the centre to make deliveries. It was actually going to be in a designated service area.
Okay, then if I may continue, just to clarify then, at what point did the city make the proponent aware of the city's concerns regarding the access to the loading dock by service vehicles from Culloden?
Look, this has been a concern, sorry, through you, presiding member. The use of delivery vehicles using Culloden has been a concern for the city throughout the assessment. There was obviously a number of submissions that came in also that raised that issue. The city met with the applicant where we did discuss some of the key concerns, and again, that issue was highlighted again. At that meeting was where we discussed the curbing and potentially putting some curbing in there to try and deter drivers from being able to turn left from Culloden Road. So if they were coming around the other way, and look, you know, that certainly may act as a deterrent, but it's not a prevention. So from our perspective, the issue of that access has always been on the table and has always been quite clear.
Clarity, you referred to a meeting just now where these matters were discussed. When would that meeting have been?
Look, that meeting was, I'd say, late July, maybe early August. That was, yeah, between the city and the applicant. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And if I may continue,
Go ahead.
I'm just interested now in the waste disposal, the trucks, that the proponent has said there would be 4 deliveries of a truck essentially via Culloden through the loading bay area, with a truck that's of the same size and scale of the City of Joondalup's disposal trucks that presumably go down Culloden once a week for residential rubbish collection. So I just wonder if you could just elucidate your concerns with 4 movements a week of a rubbish truck, given that the size and scale is similar to the City of Joondalup's own trucks accessing Culloden. Thank you.
Yeah, look, and I think it's the cumulative impact of all of the vehicles that will be using that access point. And going back to my earlier point that, you know, this shopping centre was, I think, developed back in the 1970s, and it's always had access and egress from Arnisdale Road. There was never any access or egress points on Culloden for the centre or for the hospital next door. And so from our perspective, the preference would always be for the traffic, for all traffic associated with the commercial centre to be from Arnisdale Road.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, for one last question, just with reference to the bulk and scale of the development, I have the impression from the city's RAR that bulk and scale of the developments are considered by the city to be consistent with the planning instruments, and no major concerns with that. Can I just clarify? Thank you.
Yeah, look, in terms of the height of the development, that satisfies the height requirements under our commercial policy. There are some minor setback departures to Culloden Road and an awning to Glengarry Drive. We considered that they are minor and don't really detract from the overall appearance. There's obviously been some effort in the development application process, and the applicant alluded to this earlier, in terms of the materials and colour palette to improve the appearance. The city's also recommended in condition 16 that there is a full schedule of colours and materials, including retaining walls, and also to include some face brick elements to reference the existing character of the shopping centre. That was a point that was discussed at the JDRP, and the JDRP made reference to trying to retain that village format, which is very, very difficult, I think, with the development that's being proposed, because the current centre is very small. It's got a very small supermarket, and so that village centre character it's not possible to maintain that on the larger scale. And so through incorporating some face brick elements, we think that that will sort of help to tie the development in a little bit more to the surrounding area.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other panel members have questions of council staff? Yes.
Thank you. Just checking, Catherine, with you, in the alternate, condition 3 states that the proposed approval doesn't include signage, but then condition 23 requires a signage strategy. Can I assume from that at this point we're not comfortable with the signage that's proposed on the plans, but that the city may, of its own volition and according to your policy framework, etc., approve signage at a later date?
Yes, through you, presiding member. Yes, that's exactly correct. I think there was a note in the report just to say that the proposed development plans denote most of the signage that's in the schedule that was attached to the application. There was a couple of signs that weren't, and so we just felt that if we just omitted signage altogether from the approval and just dealt with that through a separate signage strategy, then that would be the best way to deal with that.
Yeah, thank you. There have been some references in terms of submissions about floor space cap, but could you confirm for me the commercial strategy is not about a cap per se? In fact, I think SPP 4.2 requires that shouldn't be the case from a local point of view, but the way that you've assessed the floor space, that's really just a threshold beyond which further analysis needs to be done.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through you, presiding member, that's correct. It's not a cap, it's a threshold, so it's a trigger for when a proponent would need to demonstrate that any increase wouldn't undermine the sustainability of surrounding centres.
Thank you. Again, without prejudicing the debate to come, but condition 1 of the alternate references the metropolitan region scheme. Is there a particular reason for that, or is that something now that is not relevant given recent changes in legislation?
Look, possibly you've got me there.
We have been deleting that
yeah
wording in the past.
That's okay. If you've been deleting that, that's fine, and I apologise for that. I would normally have
that's all right
across that, but you've got me there.
That's okay. And just a last question. The applicant did suggest some amendments to conditions 10 and 24. Interested in your comment on that, and also if you could just repeat what you said, because I didn't quite pick it up, what you said was missing in condition 10.
So in condition 10, in our discussion around the access, we'd commented that we don't support any service vehicles using the Culloden roads, the Culloden road access, and so we wanted all service vehicles to come in forward gear and enter in forward gear from Armsdale. So that point was just omitted.
Right. And then the applicant suggested that they would prepare, I guess, almost as an alternate to that, a delivery management plan in their delivery route plan.
Yeah. And so condition 10 at the moment, we're talking about, there's a dot point there for timing, number and method of deliveries, and then timing of large delivery and waste vehicles and that sort of thing. So I'm just having a quick read. Yeah, and I think that point that the applicant's proposing, if the panel was to consider approving that would be beneficial. I guess from a compliance perspective, that would be difficult if people weren't doing the right thing, because then it's a reactive process and the city would be reacting to issues after the event had occurred.
And then just finally on condition 24, the insertion of shop to clarify what the NLA relates to. Any issue with that?
No, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Those were all my questions. Thank you for your responses.
Thank you. Mr. Arias, you have
Thanks, presiding member. You would have seen some slides put up earlier by the applicants of Collindon Road and the delivery area for the IGA. Now, I think in your comments, you suggested that access to the shopping centre hasn't been there since the 70s. Do you mean normal pedestrian vehicular access, but did you actually mean the service area as well?
There's never been a crossover access.
Okay. Well, the photos we saw did show a crossover into the area. Are you saying that that's not lawful?
I think that might have been from Arnisdale.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. My apologies. So to be clear, because I'm sure the applicants were talking about existing deliveries off Collindon, you're saying that's not the case.
I think the photos that were included in a couple of the presentations were smaller delivery trucks, perhaps delivering to the smaller tenancies. It's my understanding that the video of the truck coming off Arnisdale was a delivery truck going to the IGA.
Okay, and that did show an access.
Yeah.
Not from Culloden.
No.
The submission by Mr. Cooper showed a truck parked on Culloden, and it looked like the applicant was, or the delivery driver was manhandling goods into the.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and sorry, I was just going to add, I think also just being cognizant of the fact that this centre was designed and developed back in the 70s, and so I think the way things were probably done back then and how it was set up is certainly not how it would be done now.
Thank you. And that's my next question relates to that issue. Obviously, the centre is quite old, being developed around the 70s. And it's about the context. It's a designated local centre. If you're redeveloping today, you would expect the context to change in terms of the surrounding roads, and including Collindon. In your assessment of the current proposal, how much regard did you give to that? The fact that you were talking over 50 years later, and perhaps road impacts, amenity impacts, given it abuts a shopping centre site, a local centre site, might be acceptable to a degree.
Yeah, look, I think, I mean, and we did consider it, and I guess the issue of the delivery trucks for Woolworths using Culloden Road was something that we considered extensively. The context of this site is obviously that access has always been off Arnisdale. Arnisdale's a very, very busy road. It also provides access to the hospital next door, and there's a number of other sort of commercial and medical tenancies and the like on the southern side of Arnisdale Road, and so that to us seemed to be the logical point for access, and we just felt that in the context of the site that it just made sense for access to be retained from there, because that opportunity was available. You know, I guess, yep, the context and the streetscape and those sorts of things you would expect to change over time, and that probably lends itself to my comments in terms of the bulk and scale of this development. You know, the current development is very much smaller scale, very much village style, and noting the development that's proposed and that's before you today. I guess that's of a size that it would be very difficult to retain that village character simply just by way of the floor space and the shops that are being proposed. And so that is going to change the streetscape. It is going to be a bigger building. It is going to be closer to Culloden Road. So that's where some of those changes come through. We just felt that, and where we landed by introducing vehicle access to Culloden, that was probably the tipping point to us when there was a logical opportunity to use Arnisdale for that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? I have a few questions, and not in any order of importance. In terms of the light impact from the development, are you satisfied that the council is well aware of the measures to be taken to avoid light spillage from commercial developments onto residential areas? I'm sure you've come across this in numerous commercial developments where they abut residential developments.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question. There is a condition on there as well, number 17, to ensure that all of the lighting complies with the relevant Australian standards. So yeah, that's something that we are across.
Thank you. And we're aware of the easement with the adjoining hospital. Mention was made in some of the submissions that this is going to have this development will have a deleterious impact on the hospital and its operation. Was the hospital specifically canvassed regarding this development? Were they advised of it? And did they make a submission supporting or listing any concerns?
Yeah, they were included in our consultation. One of the officers spoke to the hospital to ensure that they had received the correspondence that had been sent to them, and they confirmed that they'd received it. The city did not receive a response or a submission from the hospital. Obviously, in relation to the easement, there is condition 20 on there that acknowledges that that easement is going to need to be modified. At the moment, the easement runs in the parking lane itself, whereas it's going to need to shuffle slightly eastward just because of the design of this development. So that is going to be need to be modified. The condition that's been recommended as well for the construction management plan also acknowledges that there will be impacts to that easement for the duration of construction, and so they're going to need to have and come to an arrangement with the hospital and with the pharmacy next door as to how that access can continue to be provided for people exiting the hospital whilst the development's under construction, if it's approved.
And you've got no information as to how that's likely to occur with the pharmacy and the hospital?
No, there's nothing that's.
I'll just ask the proponents, have you spoken to the hospital and pharmacy, and what's the situation with the easement? Do they have veto rights against this easement? Or haven't you spoken to them about the easement?
There has been conversations with the hospital, but not specifically on the easement. The surveyor has looked at it. I don't think in terms of its ability to be amended, it's difficult.
You don't know that for sure?
No, we don't know that for sure.
Be a showstopper. But anyway, let's see, or at least a bit of a problem. But to Catherine, are there any legal ways to restrict traffic on Glengarry Drive from the council's point of view? We've heard from the proponents and Mr. Cooper, who made a submission that there are, as of right, vehicles are able to travel. I mean, we're all familiar with brick carting trucks and tractors moving down quiet residential streets and cul-de-sacs. Rubbish trucks, furniture removals, they all have a right to travel on there. Is there anything the council can do to restrict those Woolworths service vehicles on Culloden?
No, and look, thanks for the question. And definitely we acknowledge that the semi-trailer vehicles that they're proposing are as of right vehicles and they can travel on these roads. So there's no prohibition that says they can't come on here. I think what we're looking at is under the main roads hierarchy, certainly for local distributors, it talks about that they should accommodate buses but discourage trucks. So it's not saying they shouldn't be on a local distributor altogether, but that movements, and so a local distributor is Glengarry Drive. So we acknowledge that to get to the site, there's going to have to be trucks coming on Glengarry Drive. It's not possible for them to get there without doing that. But I guess again, going back to my earlier point, Arnisdale Road is also a local distributor. And so it just makes sense for the trucks to stay on those local distributors and to avoid going on the access road like Culloden.
And trucks can go on access roads?
But yeah, they can.
Yeah.
If this were to be approved, I guess it would be regular truck movements 365 days a year, and that's probably the difference between, you know, if somebody's building a house or moving house, those trucks are going there for a one-off delivery to drop something off, whereas this is a commercial operation that's going to have regular deliveries every single day.
Okay, thank you. And is it against the law to remove trees? We had a submitter say it's against the law to remove trees. Are you familiar with that law?
No, I guess there are obviously some requirements that exist under sort of environmental legislation depending on the types of trees, and so the proponent would need to make sure that they met any of those requirements if any of the trees fell into that classification.
And in the context of this development, you didn't encounter any of that sort of restriction on the vegetations that's in the verge or on the site?
Not that we're aware of. I know there was a couple of, or some submitters made comments around potential cannabis habitat, and so that would just be something that the proponent needs to be mindful of as they're going to clear, just to make sure that before they clear that they've obviously met any obligations that exist.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Presiding member.
So, yes.
You just, if you perhaps a clarification, Catherine's indicated that there was an error in the alternative recommendation in condition 10, where a dot point was omitted, which is a significant dot point. Do you agree that perhaps we get the proponent to respond to? I've indicated they're generally happy with conditions. I think that's a significant change.
Well, I think the condition says all vehicles servicing the site from Arnisdale Road, which I don't think you'd be happy with in the proposal as it sits, that we're to determine.
Thank you, member. On behalf of the applicant team, any condition, any of them, 10 or otherwise, that would restrict access for our deliveries from Culloden Road wouldn't be acceptable.
Yes, okay, thank you. Does that clarify that?
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions of the council staff by panel members? Yes, Councillor Pizzey.
Sorry, just trying to find my audio button. So can I just get a clarification perhaps from the panel or from the city then? If we're going to be voting on this, are we voting on it with the condition 10 that no vehicles are entering from Arnisdale, or is that with that condition not present?
Well, as it stands, it doesn't have that condition.
I'm just going to foreshadow now then, is that okay? Or
well, we need to have a mover and a seconder before we can move into discussion on the item. Okay. So we'll carry on it unless you've got a question of the council staff. Okay. All right. Well, we've exhausted all the presentations and questions. Now on the agenda we have the item itself, and in order that the panel can go into discussion on that, we require a mover and a seconder. Do I have a mover to the recommendation to refuse?
Just a question. If I move something now, like I want to know how I put a foreshadow of a deferral to this.
At the moment, we've got one recommendation, and that is for refusal. I need a mover for the recommendation before us. If there is no mover, then the recommendation lapses, and I will seek an alternate. If I don't, alternate would be in strife, but it will. it'll be refused, but I need a mover for the recommendation to refuse on the grounds given, for the reasons given.
And those reasons were for access through Arnisdale, is that correct?
Well, the recommendation states,
Reference to clause 67.
it says, refuse the application. Having regard to clause 67 M, N, S, T, X and Y, the development will unreasonably impact on the amenity and safety of residents as users of Glengarry Drive, Culloden Road and potentially Carlisle Crescent, Kinloch Place as a result of multiple large delivery trucks accessing the development site from Culloden Road on a daily basis.
I'm happy to move that.
Okay, do I have a seconder? I have a seconder. Councillor Pizzey, you can speak to the item as the mover.
Okay, thank you. I think, sorry, I'm just gonna find I think overall there is, I think this plan and development is largely supported by the community, but I think there are key issues that can be mitigated further with design amendments. And this plan does have planning discrepancies that do affect the safety and amenity of the residents in the area, which can be mitigated and with some design changes. I understand these would cost Woolworths some more money and it would be more difficult in the day-to-day running. But in my opinion, I think it would better suit the residential area to explore those design amendments further. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hill is seconder.
That's reserve my right, if I may.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wish to speak further in support of the motion or against the motion? Yes, Karen.
I'll speak against the motion and the reasons of the motion for refusal. Compatibility with the setting. I think that the proposal has demonstrated that it has taken into account changes of level. It has taken into account the residential context and obviously has provided a very positive and landscaped interface with the existing residential development and sufficient noise mitigation measures along the boundary with the hospital. The setting is an area in transition. Further increased density is proposed through the planning framework. So I therefore find that this refurbishment and redevelopment of the centre is compatible. In terms of local amenity, I think we need to look at the broader community, and we've heard from a number of people today, including tenants and local residents, that they support the development. I do note that there are particularly some residents on Culloden Road who are perhaps more impacted than others, but obviously, living adjacent to a shopping area, and those impacts are occurring at the moment through informal and random access from vehicles on that road, and this would formalise that and control it in many respects. The adequacy of access primarily is from Arnisdale Road, with a secondary for limited access from Culloden. The traffic amount, I think we've had an adequate traffic impact assessment. The road network certainly has capacity for the potential for increased volumes and for the types of vehicles which are accessing, and I do concur with the applicant's engineer that my reading of main roads classifications is that these roads are really to access properties, and that truck movements are acceptable, provided that they are accessing these properties. Otherwise, properties become landlocked and cannot function for their purpose. The impact on the whole community, I think I've spoken to that. I'm looking at the broader benefit of a somewhat tired and old centre being refurbished, upgraded, redeveloped to provide greater amenity for needs of local residents. And in terms of submissions, yes, there were a significant number of submissions against the application from far and wide, but there were also a number of submissions in support. And so for me, on balance, I think there is the potential to approve this development, but with a significant number of conditions which control its function and operation.
Thank you. Mr. Arias, you wish to speak?
Thank you. Yes, I won't be supporting the motion to refuse. I recognise the strong views of the surrounding residents and some legitimate concerns regarding amenity impacts. And let me say, it's not uncommon for this panel to receive those sort of concerns where there's redevelopment. It seems to be an acknowledgement that the shopping centre site is in need of development. And in order to provide a level of service that is contemporary with community expectations, but there are some consequences associated with that. The RAR concludes that meets the objectives of the council scheme and the relevant state and local planning policies, which I agree. In terms of the issue of bulk scale height, once again, the RAR reaches a conclusion that it's appropriate for the local context. There's been significant discussion, obviously, and it's probably, in my mind, the most significant issue, and that is access to the shopping centre from Collindon Road. Once again, as Member Hyde has indicated, I think in considering amenity impact, you have to have regard for the context, and the context is it's a road that abuts a shopping centre. And what might have occurred 50 years ago is probably less relevant today. And in a redevelopment as proposed, I think there will be some impacts, and the measure for this panel is whether it's unreasonable. And given what we've heard in terms of the volumes proposed, I don't consider that's an unreasonable impact. I also note that there are proposed conditions to address things like lighting and noise, and there are Australian standards that require compliance of those. And in relation to noise, the EPA regulations control that. There's also proposals for management plans to the council's satisfaction around the operation, waste and traffic benefit. I believe given they're to the satisfaction of the local government, I'm satisfied that they would be managed appropriately and responsibly. So on that basis, I'm not in a position to support the refusal. Thank you, President.
Okay, thank you. Look, I will also be not supporting the recommendation to refuse. I've looked at the application. I've been to the site. I've wandered through the site. It's a tired-looking site with in need of a complete makeover, and not a refurbishment probably wouldn't do the trick. This is a completely new contemporary development in keeping with community expectations for our shopping experience. And I think the fact that a lot of people in the locality now travel to Warwick and to Careen and other centres is an indication that this centre needs a makeover. The proposal that's submitted opens up the overall development to the streetscape. and I think enhances the experience, visual experience in the area. It provides a surplus of car parking, which in this day and age of sitting on panels like this, we find we struggle to get developers to provide sufficient parking. In this case, they're providing 20 odd extra bays or thereabouts. The volume of traffic generated by the development has been stated to, and I quote, be easily accommodated within the existing road network, and that's because the roads are large roads by and large, and they're designed to carry the traffic that's expected of a commercial and residential interface. The retail floor space analysis has been studied, peer reviewed, another review. We've had submissions on it. My experience with these retail floor analysis, at the margins, you can fiddle the figures and move them around a bit, but at the end of the day, the decision has to be made on what's fair and reasonable with these submissions. And in this case, the city supports the increase in floor space, and it says it is in keeping with their local planning policies on retail floor space. On noise, I've heard nothing from anyone regarding the existing noise and the existing servicing facilities. But while I was on the site yesterday, there was a truck backing into the service bay. I was standing on Culloden Road and I could hear it quite easily. So I think that having enclosed service bays is a far better situation. I also saw pedestrians walking from Culloden Road through the car park whilst the truck was backing towards them, and hopefully that won't happen in the redeveloped area, because I think a gate should go across the service bay. So landscaping, yes, there is a significant removal of trees, but you don't get a redevelopment of this sort without the removal of a number of trees. The city is recommending more trees and other structures, and the city's assessment said the landscaping along the street boundaries and verges is considered to result in a substantial landscaping, or insubstantial landscaping is supported. Building height, the city responsible authority report was supportive of it and said that they thought it was and the officers today said that it's a reasonable development in terms of its scale and nature, given the services it's providing. In regard to setbacks, the city once again said they acknowledge the impact on Culloden Road. However, the development facing Culloden Road is passive and has substantial landscaping and also treatment in terms of the cladding and visual impact of the building. In overall aesthetics, as I said at one stage, it's in the eye of the beholder, but I think that the proponents have gone through iterations with the design review panel and through council staff and come up with a responsible design for the development. The height of the building, I think, in elevation form looks worse than actually standing at ground looking up at a building. A lot of the roofs, structures and so forth aren't visible. The only significant reason in my mind that the development has shown objection, and that is the service vehicles on Culloden Road. And having dealt with a number of applications of similar developments in various authorities and locations over the years on this panel, the issue of service vehicles often is raised where there are interfaces between residential and commercial. And I have seen, or it's been presented to me on numerous occasions, that Coles and Woolworths and IGA, they have primarily have vehicles servicing sites. Their drivers are trained. They form responsible logistic agencies, and they can be trained and monitored for compliance with waste delivery management. This application has got a waste management plan, a traffic management plan, a delivery maintenance strategy, an operational noise management plan, lighting management plan, noise management plan attached to it. And I think in that regard, with the conditions that are proposed, this development should, in many aspects, enhance the overall amenity of the locality, not from just livable area, but also from a retail and shopping experience. Therefore, I'll be supporting an alternate recommendation to this one. Councillor Hill, you wish to speak?
Yes, I will second it. And just to clarify, I was happy to second this refusal because I think that would open up the debate, and I think it's important for all interested parties to listen to the views of the panel members, and appreciate the comments from my fellow panel members. So this project is all about urban redevelopment. And the main issue, as I see it, is the service vehicle route and loading dock arrangements. And I noticed that there's a lot of comments about safety, for example, pedestrians and even dogs surrounding streets. My view is safety is critically important, but it's not just critically important to pedestrians and vehicle users, it's also important to people working in the loading bay and handling the service delivery. My preference would have been if the service vehicle could have gone from Arnisdale in that direction and then out exit Cordon, but we've heard that the location of the loading dock makes that not a practical alternative. And I'm happy to accept that. I did visit the site yesterday and I was frankly surprised and astonished at the actual width of the road of Carden Road. It is a very wide road, so I don't have concerns though from a safety perspective of trucks using that. And so, as we've heard today, the truck movements are 3 per day for service delivery trucks and 4 per week for rubbish trucks. Potentially, if they are allowed to use that route, then as has been stated, the rubbish trucks already go down Cotton for domestic refuse retrieval. So I'm happy to close my comments there and look forward to further discussions on an alternative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pizzey, as mover of the recommendation, right of reply.
Thank you. There's no question that this centre needs redevelopment. Accessing properties and truck movements are acceptable, but not the continuous use of trucks that this development will offer. It's different to normal residential use, in my opinion. Increasing density that just further impacts the safety of those residents and more residents that will be accessing the development. There are options to have smaller delivery vehicles to mitigate these risks that require better planning to be done by the applicant. And I do think that this development is possible with access only by Arnisdale Road. It just needs smarter planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Having closed debate on the item, I'll put the recommendation for refusal as shown in the responsible authority report to a vote. All those in favour? 1 against, 4. The motion is lost. That being the case, I'll call for an alternate recommendation. We have one before us. Do I have a mover for that? Member Hyde. The alternate recommendation that's printed in the responsible authority report. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Arias. Member Hyde, do you wish to speak to that alternate?
Thank you, presiding member. I do wish to speak to it. I think though first perhaps I could run through a number of amendments if I may.
Yes, amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1 would be to delete condition one which talks to pursuant to clause 26 of the Metropolitan Region Scheme.
Okay, all
It's
right.
deleting that.
Yes. Okay, do you wish to speak? Do I have a second? Yes, Mr. Arias, seconded.
Well, only that legislation change, which means that we no longer through these local government approvals need to reference the Metropolitan Region Scheme unless it's associated with reserves or the like.
Okay, Mr. Arias, do you wish to speak to it? No comment. No. Anyone wish to speak against that? Amendment number 1 to delete 1. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Thank you. My next amendments are associated with condition 10, and I have 2 amendments which perhaps I propose separately. The first amendment to condition 10 is to add the applicant's proposal for a dot point, which would read an additional dot point, which would read a delivery route plan for the larger delivery vehicles to the satisfaction of the city.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Arias, thank you. Member Hyde, you wish to speak to that?
Only briefly, presiding member, the city has concurred that this would be an appropriate means of understanding majority of vehicular access within the network, not just the site access itself. And obviously these things run with the development, so it gives a great deal of certainty and finality once endorsed by the city.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arias, do you wish to speak to it?
Thank you. I think the dot point provide that additional security and control for the city in terms of management of that aspect. So I'm prepared to support that.
Anyone else wish to speak to that item or the amendment? If not, Karen, you wish to?
No, happy to vote.
Okay, I'll put the amendment number 2 to add an additional dot point to condition 10 regarding an access plan or a
Delivery route.
delivery route plan. Okay, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. My second amendment to condition 10 would be to add a new dot point, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, a new dot point in the 5th position, which would read no more than 3 delivery vehicles per day entering the site from Culloden Road.
Okay, do I have a seconder?
Can I ask a question on that? Would that include the whole development or just Woolworths?
The whole development.
Thank you.
That's it. That's what you meant?
That's what I meant.
Yep. Okay. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Pizzi. Okay.
Thank you. Just, I think there was acknowledgement from the applicant that that might be appropriate to give a degree of certainty to the operational operational noise management plan. It is what is proposed within the development application, and therefore, again, you know, that runs with the proposal, approval of it, rather than simply leaving it all to an agreement which this particular operator may have with their delivery service providers. So I feel that it ties it up appropriately.
Okay, seconder, councillor Pizzi, you wish to speak to that?
I would hold my right. Thank you.
Okay, right, councillor Hill, you wish to speak?
I just want to seek a clarification question on where that leaves us with waste vehicles, which are not delivery vehicles. I just to make sure that we understand what the intention would be there.
At the moment, condition 13
yeah.
relates to waste management. So
It's from Armistead.
as condition 13 stands at the moment.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else wish to speak to the item? Not, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour for amendment 2?
3.
3, you're right. Okay. That's carried unanimously.
Thank you. Condition 18, would be as per identified by the city officers, is to delete some duplicated words.
Shall be submitted.
Yes. Thank you. So, open to the satisfaction of the city and approved by the city. So we've got too many shall be deleted twos in there.
So the one you're saying to come out as
I think
after the
it's the
satisfaction of the
I
city?
think it's the second one.
It's okay, all right. So that's amendment 4, moved by member Hyde, seconded by, yes, I'll say Mr. Councillor Hill, sorry. Okay, is there any discussion on it? No further? Okay, all right, I'll put that amendment number 4. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you.
And my last amendment before I speak to the motion is condition 24, which again, after the puts shop for net lettable area.
The shop net lettable area?
Correct.
Okay, so you're moving that. Do I have a seconder?
Just a clarification, might remember, that not described through the scheme definition of net lettable area?
It is, yes.
Okay, all right.
Do I have a seconder? I'll second it.
Just provides clarification and certainty, and yes, it may well be within the scheme. However, should there be changes of definitions or whatever, we have it clearly here.
Okay, thank you, and I concur with that. Anyone else speak to the item?
Seeking to clarify where the word shop would be inserted.
After the word
After the word the shop
shop.
net lettable area for the site shall not exceed. Okay, anyone speak against that? If not, member Hyde, you wish to speak? All right, I'll put the amendment number 5. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Thank you. So returning to the motion, I do understand the issues raised by the local residents, but I have to see those in the context of the planning framework and the technical documentation that has been presented. And this particular plan and series of plans before us, rather than redesigning or wishing for an alternate. I am familiar with the location. In my assessment of the planning framework, I can clearly see that the land uses are contemplated. Indeed, they're actually permitted uses in the commercial zone. And furthermore, many of these uses are of different scales and types, but they actually exist at the moment. So then looking at the redevelopment proposal, I find it to be of a scale which is appropriate for the area. As I've said, it is an area that I recognise is in transition and a potential for higher density. As assessed by the technical needs and the benefits assessment, which have been peer reviewed multiple times and accepted by the city, that scale of development appears appropriate for this location within this catchment. The design review panel did review it pre-lodgement, and a number of their comments have been taken on board, and further the development has evolved, which is very welcome as a result of the feedback received through the submissions from the community and further engagement that the proponent has undertaken. And I think those changes have been positive. The traffic analysis and the city's assessment is that the volumes can be accommodated. There's more than adequate site parking provided. The landscape improvements certainly soften the interface with the residential area. I think there should be more provided at the upper level in whatever form can be appropriate to provide for more shade and greater amenity. The other management plans cover sensitive issues like noise and lighting, but also, and that's through conditions 11 and 12 and 17, but we also have environmental regulations which can manage anything through a complaints process should that even occur. The waste management is currently managed by condition 13 and does provide for this being from Arnisdale Road. And in none of my amendments did I propose otherwise, but quite happy to hear from other members. I think waste management 4 times a week can be perhaps somewhat more intrusive, and being a smaller vehicle, I think it could be accommodated, albeit with a number of manoeuvres on site through access and egress from Arnisdale Road only. Certainly the delivery management plan that we have amended the condition associated with it will actually run with the development and will control the amount of vehicle access from Culloden as well as the other entry points for other service vehicles for other tenancies. And this obviously needs to be to the city's satisfaction, which is the safety net for these things. So I do recognise the impacts on the residents opposite, but this plan will actually control and manage what seems to be occurring informally. So on balance, looking at those impacts against the broader benefits for the wider community and the context of an area that is in transition, I'm comfortable that those benefits on balance outweigh the impacts, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Seconder.
Presiding member. I support the reasons outlined by Member Hyde, and I won't repeat that. But in general terms, I think there's acknowledgement that the centre needs to be redeveloped to provide a much more contemporary level of service and meet community expectations. I think that's generally agreed. The city officers generally conclude that the proposed design, the bulk and scale are appropriate, and once again generally meet the scheme requirements and the policy guidelines of the City of Joondalup. The normal amenity considerations, I think, are addressed in a very rigorous fashion by the conditions that are proposed and have been modified through this meeting relating to waste disposal, operation management and delivery. And I think that provides a much higher degree of certainty in terms of what the city can apply to control what in terms of the other reason for supporting the application is, I mentioned earlier, it's the local planning context. And I think in measuring what amenity impacts are reasonable, the decision maker needs to have regard to the local context. And there is an expectation that this site might be redeveloped, and as part of that redevelopment, there might be some impact on surrounding areas. Now, having said that, I'm satisfied that the conditions proposed will minimise whatever those impacts might be. So yes, I will be supporting the alternative motion to approve.
Okay. Anyone speak further?
Yes.
Hill.
Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, this is an urban renewal project, and I'm sure it's much needed given the current condition on the location. I would like to emphasise that the current conditions on the site don't represent a great deal of amenity to the nearby residents, and there are also inherent safety risks from the manner in which service deliveries are currently taking place. So I would urge everyone to consider when we're talking about safety to compare with what we have today. And I'm confident from my questioning today and the answers provided by the proponent that safety is very much paramount in their minds in terms of how they're going to manage the deliveries from Culloden Road. As I say, I was very surprised it's quite a wide road. I'm thinking 3 vehicles a day, we wouldn't be walking in it to turn left from Glengarry and turn right into the service area, as long as the gate was open in a reasonable time. So I think that's an important consideration. I also looked at the Glengarry access route from the freeway, and my observations there were that the first half of that trip, the northern part, the road is somewhat narrower than it is further south, and there are also a few trees around that have a bit of overhanging branches that might need some attention if large trucks are going to go down there. But from halfway down towards the actual site, the road's significantly wider, and no concerns with that. Appreciate the report from the city. I hope that the answers provided by the proponent today, both in terms of the number of service deliveries from Culloden, but also the assurances that those trucks would not be using other residential side streets, be to the satisfaction of the city. I think that's an important matter. And I'm just very mindful that this is a very large project with lots of different issues associated with it, but the key issue that's picked up by the city in the original recommendation was the service delivery of the loading dock. So my priority on that is to make sure that impact is minimised and safety is maximised. So with that, I'll cease my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone Councillor Pizzi, wish to speak to the item? The alternate recommendation, okay. I won't dwell on it. I just think that it's had a good assessment. The details of the proposal have been thrashed out amongst the community and the proponents and council, and I think the end result is a development that will suit the location with appropriate controls and measures to reduce the amenity impact on the locality. No new development has no impact. Some more than others bear that impact, but I think the relatively small impact with the relatively small number of service vehicles entering from Culloden will the overall development outweighs the small number of traffic that has to access from that area to enhance the safety of pedestrians, users, and of the loading docks that are proposed. So I'm supporting the proposal. That being the case, Member Hyde, I'll give you right of reply and close debate on it.
I'm happy to close debate. She didn't.
She chose not to. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll put the item. So the alternate recommendation with the amendments. All those in favour? That's 4 against. Councillor Pizzi votes against. Okay. Thank you. That finishes that item on 3 on the agenda. Item 4, Form 2 DAP application 0 none. Item 5, SAP reconsideration 0 none. Part C of the agenda, other business. Item 1, SAT applications to Supreme Court of Appeals. They're all listed. Item 2, meeting closure. I'll close the meeting at 12:56 p.m. and I'll thank presenters, applicants, presentations, interested parties, the panel, council staff, and our support staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.